All right, we do have 7 people here, so we do have a quorum, so I'm going to give it another minute, and then we're going to begin. You almost ready, Mike? Okay. Yeah, okay. Okay, I'm going to call this Joint Records and Public Safety and Government Oversight Committees to order. Before we begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, Commissioner Sauger, who is our most senior member and probably one of the oldest living members in Macomb County, would like to say something. So go ahead.
First of all, I'd like to have our darling sheriff stand up just for a minute. Tony, back in May, your great hockey team put on a nice game against the people from Washington Township. And nobody cared who scored, nobody cared who won. They did, I know. I saw the game, I was there, I enjoyed it, but the biggest thing was what you did. You don't very seldom get patted on the back for nice things, but you guys raised over $11,000 that went to St. Jude, I think it's in Tennessee. So you got to be complimented for that, and a good job. Well done, Tony. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, looking for a motion to adopt today's agenda. Commissioner Sauger and Commissioner Romano. Stuttering already. We got to vote on that, Mike?
That vote passes 10-0.
Okay, vote passes. All right, next on the agenda is an approval of minutes. These are for minutes for Government Operations Committee dated June 3rd, 2019. I'm looking for a motion on that. Commissioner Brown, supported by Commissioner Drollet. Please vote on 4A.
We just vote on.
No, we're doing 4A first.
And that vote passes 10-0.
Okay, going on now to 4B, Records and Public Safety Committee, dated June 6, 2019. Commissioner Myjak, supported by Commissioner Haw. Please vote.
That vote passes 11-0.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, moving on now to item number 5, public participation. We're going to give 5 minutes to anybody from the public that would like to address anything that's on the agenda here this afternoon. Please come forward. What do you this? Go ahead, sir. Please state your name and address if you could, please.
Oh,
There you go.
Now
You got
it's
it.
a red button.
Go ahead, sir. Please state your name and address.
Good afternoon. My name's Andrew Brickle. My address is 36991 Hable Road, Richmond, Michigan.
Go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
We're here on behalf of Brenkel Contractors regarding, this is Dan Burko, my partner.
Brenkel as well.
We're here on behalf of Brenkel Contractors regarding the Macomb County Jail indigent inmate video courtrooms. So I wrote a letter. I was wondering if we could pass it out to the board. Would that be fine?
All right, you got her. Give it to Leon. That's fine.
Okay. Brenkel Contractors was a low bidder on the Macomb County Jail indigent video courtroom construction project. After the post-bid interviews with Brenkel Contractors and the second low bidder, R&E Development, the project architect informed us that R&E Development was being recommended for the project based upon their ability to procure the required equipment in 6 to 8 weeks as opposed to 12 to 14 weeks, which we stated. Upon further communication with the mechanical equipment supplier, everyone was informed that R&E development cannot get the equipment any quicker than 12 to 14 weeks, which is what we stated. Brenkel Contractors asked that we be considered to be awarded this project as a low bidder with a price of $327,000, which is nearly a $6,000 savings to Macomb County, given the fact that both the first and second low bidders have now been given the same expected equipment delivery date to complete this project as it was designed. In addition to being the low bidder, Brenkel Contractors completed a $3.9 million renovation project at the Macomb County Jail in 2018 and is very familiar with the staff, safety, security, and protocol of working in a secured inmate-occupied facility. So basically what the point is the county would, based upon the recommendation from the architect, the county would be paying a $6,000 premium on this project based upon nothing other than the higher bidder than us gave or wrong information to the architect, and we gave accurate information. We got passed over. So we just wish you guys would reconsider that and consider awarding us that project.
Yeah, our policies, we can't respond or talk to you during public participation.
Okay.
Obviously, this item's on the agenda. We'll probably have some questions in regard to that.
Okay.
And you're more than welcome to stick around. We do have another public participation at the end of this meeting. I may caution you, it may be a long meeting, but you will be allowed to speak for another 5 minutes if you desire, and we'll accommodate you that way.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your information. Anybody else from the public wish to address the board? Going once, oh, come on up, sir. State your name and address, please.
Since this is an open meeting, I don't think I'm required to give my name and address.
We do have you give your name, and we certainly have you give your township at the very least. Yes, we do.
Michael Moreau, Sterling Heights, Michigan.
Fair enough. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'm the ask a few questions and make a few comments about the proposed new jail. What would the taxpayer cost be on the interest on the $375 million? The new jail would add between 86 and 108 more personnel at a cost of between $6.6 and $8.5 million per year, plus future legacy costs. Does the proposed 20 mil rate increase adequately address these added personnel costs? Has the new jail and additional manpower been compared to other uses for taxpayer dollars, such as the opioid crisis, drug abuse in general, housing and medical care for indigent citizens and single mothers at risk, infrastructure costs, and legacy costs for current and proposed personnel? Mr. Hackle recently stated that the roads in Macomb County could use all of the funding allocated to the entire state of Michigan in Macomb County, and it would still be inadequate. We know we're going to have emergency costs in the future. The Fraser sewer collapse is but one example. We know crises will occur. We just don't know when, but we do know they will be expensive. We must be prudent with our spending in light of future expenses. Because the new jail is so costly, this proposal should go to the voters in an even year election where the voter count is much higher. In closing, it's prudent to consider the total all-encompassing cost to the taxpayer and consideration of other potential uses for taxpayer dollars before a final decision is made on this proposal for a new jail. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public wish to address this board? Okay, going once, going twice. We're going to close public participation for this round. We're going to move on now to Records and Public Safety Department recommendations. We got a lot here from the sheriff, so we're going to start off with item 6A, which is a purchase of a 2019 Chevrolet Malibu. Captain Dave Daniels, come on up. Good to see you, Captain.
Thank you. Good afternoon, board members. I'm Captain Daniels, Macomb County Sheriff's Office, Uniformed Services Division Commander. I'm here to request that you approve the contract with Todd Wenzel Chevrolet to purchase one model year 2019 Chevrolet Malibu. The total cost for this non-police rated administrative vehicle will be paid for from the fiscal year 2019 Capital Project Wireless 911 budget. This vehicle will replace an older model vehicle, which was from the Sheriff's Office fleet and will be designated for use by the Sheriff Dispatch personnel only. The bidding process to purchase this vehicle was submitted, reviewed, and approved by Macomb County Finance and Purchasing Departments, as well as the Macomb County Fleet Manager. The contract was awarded to lowest responsible bidder, Todd Wenzel Chevrolet in Wayne, Michigan. Todd Wenzel's award of bid number is 20-18. Barring any unforeseen loss of current sheriff's office fleet, this will complete the scheduled replacement of our vehicles for fiscal year 2019. With that, I have any questions. I'll answer any questions.
I do have a question, Captain.
Yes, sir.
You indicate this is going to come from the 911 wireless fund.
Yes.
We had a list of vehicles that was presented early in the year that were going to come out of, I thought, the capital
Yes.
account. Is there a reason why we're taking it out of the 911 wireless account as opposed to the vehicles that were listed for
Yes.
the? Yeah, can you
Yes,
tell
sir.
us that, please?
Yeah. The E911 fund allows us to, it's an allowable purchase from that fund that we get from the state of Michigan for 911 services, because we're a public safety answering, it's called a PSAP. So that allows us to take these funds from that E911 fund and allow this purchase for this vehicle.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you stated it, I didn't hear. Is this a replacement or is this an outright new?
Yes, sir, it's a replacement of a previous vehicle.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Commissioner Brown?
Yes, thank you. Will this be outfitted as a regular patrol car then? It's just be an additional patrol car that could be, or this can be equipped with certain features different than our normal patrol cars?
No, sir, it's an administrative car, will not be outfitted for anything for patrol-rated vehicles, a non-patrol-rated vehicle.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners? Okay, at this point, I'm seeking a motion to take this over to full board. Commissioner Dujay, supported by Commissioner Myjack. Please vote.
The vote passes 11-1 with Commissioner Carabelli voting no.
Thank you very much. Okay, going to move on now to 6B. Captain, go ahead. This is for signature Ford, 2019 Ford F-350 Transit vans. Go ahead, Captain.
Yes, sir, thank you. Again, for the record, good afternoon, board members. Again, Captain Daniels, Macomb County Sheriff's Office, Uniform Service Division Commander. I'm here to request that you approve the contract with Signature Ford to purchase two 2019 Ford Model 350 Transit vans. These two transit vans will replace two older model vans that were in the Sheriff's Office fleet. These vans will provide safe and reliable transportation for incarcerated individuals that have to be transported throughout the county and throughout the state of Michigan.
Sorry. That was for public
It's no problem.
You're getting a lot done in 5 minutes.
No problem. Let's hope the next one goes fast. Each van will require upfitting and graphics, to answer your question, sir. The total cost, including upfitting, will not exceed $74,414. Total cost for these vehicles will be paid for from the 2019 non-departmental purchase appropriation in the general fund, which is the fund you mentioned earlier, sir. The bidding process to purchase these vehicles was submitted, reviewed, and approved by Macomb County Finance and Purchasing Departments, as well as the Macomb County Fleet Manager. The contract was awarded to the lowest responsible bidder, and that's Signature Ford in Owasso, Michigan. Signature Ford's award bid number is 2118. With that, I will take any questions.
Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
We just approved another van, how long
Yes.
ago? Last week?
Yes.
And this is, how many transit vans do we have?
So we gave the Finance Department a 5-year plan. So every year we come up with vehicles that are scheduled to be replaced. We have 14 vans in our fleet. 3 of these vans were scheduled to be replaced this year. This is the 3rd of those 3 vans.
So this will be on the transit?
sir. That's
Unless
correct.
something happens, okay.
They were
And
scheduled for be replaced.
So my question is, what year are the vans we're replacing and how many miles do they have on them?
That's a good question. All right, so the model years, I don't have that in front of me right now, but the vehicles that we have that were replaced are anywhere from 110 to 130,000 miles currently. I can get that information for you exactly if you'd like
And I
it.
guess miles shouldn't be a concern. I'm sure there's a lot of hours on the engine too.
Yes, sir.
from
Well, they're,
sitting.
yes, they're over
Okay.
warranty, I can tell you that.
All right, thank you. Thank you,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Commissioner Dujay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question, are the old vehicles being sold at the county auction?
Yes, sir.
Have we, the money that we get from the county auction, where does that go? Does that go back to you? Does it go to the county? Where?
Goes back to the general fund.
All right. All right, fair enough. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Commissioner Haw.
Thank you, Chair. These must be being purchased through the Coordinated Purchasing Program because I'm looking at the prices for the Malibu and the vans. Those are excellent prices. That's how it's taking place?
Yes, sir. Well, it was the bid process was done by Finance Department and by our fleet manager, but yes.
Well, somebody's doing some good shopping, so thank you.
I'd like to get those prices
Thanks,
as well.
Chair.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, are there any other questions? If not, then I'm going to be seeking a motion to move this on to full board. Commissioner Carabelli, supported by Commissioner Sauger. Please vote.
The vote passes 13-0.
Thank you. Okay, going to move on now to item C. This is a contract with R&E Development for the indigent inmate video courtrooms. We have Barb here. Barb, come on up. Hi, good to see you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is Captain Walt Zimney, Macomb County Sheriff's Office, Jail Administrator. We're in front of you for a motion to approve a contract with R&E Development for the construction of 2 indigent inmate courtrooms within the jail facility at a cost of $332,748. That funding is coming strictly and totally from the State Indigent Defense Commission Compliance Plan and its grant funding. There is no county dollars that will be spent on this project. The purpose is for this project and the construction of these 2 courtrooms and video rooms is to be in compliance with the Michigan Indigent Defense Council's 4 current referendums that we are required to comply with. This process went through an RFP, and there was bidding. There were 4 responses. Of the 4 responses, we interviewed the 2 lowest bidders, one being Brenkel, who came up for public participation a few moments ago, and R&E Development. This was also chaired by Wakely, Ron Syme from Wakely Architecture, and he did the vetting of both of these contractors. It was the conclusion at the end of the interview process that we would move forward with recommendation to ask for your approval for the R&E contract to be approved at a cost of just under $6,000 from the lowest bidder. And the logic behind that was that the project through interview was the R&E representatives articulated the fact that they could work multiple shifts and that they could acquire the equipment and procure the materials within the necessary time to be in compliant with the state's mandated rules.
Okay.
Barb, any other questions?
No, we'll take any questions.
Okay, first on the list is Commissioner Carabelli. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome.
The equipment that's being purchased through the state, can the actual units, other than wiring, be utilized in a new facility if so that happens?
No, this contract is strictly for the construction of the rooms themselves.
It's the physical rooms?
The physical rooms. The video visitation or video arraignment pieces, the Polycom units, are being purchased separately through grant funding.
Okay. I need to understand a little bit, and maybe the sheriff can help me too. I thought this whole video arraigning, I went and talked and they were going to start doing it from the circuit court, and I thought we already had something set up, so I'm just trying to understand.
Do you want me to?
Let me get it.
Okay.
Let me get it. So, yes, you went and talked to the circuit court judges on how we can reduce inmates leaving the county jail and doing more video courts with downtown Mount Clemens here. Michigan Indigent Defense Council indicates it's the new legislation, and there's funding out there that says every individual that goes before a judge for arraignment has to have an attorney sitting, standing, advocating for bond during that first court appearance. This grant allows us to build out our room so we can do more video arraignment, accommodate attorneys, accommodate the courts. So this is a different piece that we're working on.
So that's separate than that?
It's separate than that, yeah. This is actually with your Shelby Township, and I think you got Utica too, or not? Yeah, so all their prisoners are coming to our jail right now, and we're doing all the video arraignment, and Barb's Community Corrections doing pretrial assessments and giving those judges at Shelby Township Court a good understanding of who they're going to arraign and who's going out and who's staying in the jail. That's what Michigan Indigent Defense project is all about. So this was over and beyond your original conversation you had with circuit court judges there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
What last question I do have is, my understanding, there was a group put together, including an architect, making a recommendation to the board for the approval of the contract. In light of some conversation that came from business of the floor and timing and everything, I asked, I have no problem approving this today, but I would like to see before our full board if with what was said today can be looked at and come back to us and the reasoning why they're referring one over the other if the time frame ends up being the same. So if somebody can get back to us prior to full board, I would truly appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Barb, have you had a chance to look at the plans to this?
Yes, I was involved in not only in the meetings that we had with both of the bids as well.
Okay, and for a community correction standpoint, you think it's gonna work?
Yes, exactly. It's we had an opportunity to go to Kent County and take a look at the setup is essentially the same that they have in Kent County. It's efficient. It's much more, I think, secure, and it'll be a faster process for us to allow for the attorneys to meet with their clients and then move them into scheduled arraignments that we have with each of the courts. So yes.
Okay,
absolutely.
good. I know you're going to be a user. I'm going to be a user, so I want to make sure the users had some involvement in this.
Yes, absolutely.
And just to remind the board, this is budget neutral to us. This is all coming from state fund. So this is mandated by the state, and we're going to get the money from the state to do that. I guess in long lines of what Commissioner Carabelli said, you obviously heard the gentleman come up from public participation with the bidding process. So I think we'll probably move this to full board, but I think we're going to vote on it tomorrow. So, if we can get that information over to Commissioner Carabelli as soon as possible. Again, we just want to make sure it was done fairly, which I'm sure it was. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Brown.
Yeah, I express the same concerns. Why don't we just wait until we get the information and then we could, before we approve anything? I mean, obviously there are time frames, and if what the gentleman said was accurate, then it does cast a whole light on this, different light on who's going to be awarded the bid, and I don't want to. Let's just wait. There's no rush on this, right? I mean, of course, there's always a rush. There's always a deadline, right? Everything comes to us at a deadline.
The state fiscal year ends, or begins in October, so
we've got a little time.
We actually, the reason why there is such a rush behind this is that we have the funding for fiscal year 19, and that's where this project was put in. So the project has to be started, completed, and billed out by September 30th.
So we could easily we can approve this project. We have 2 full board meetings this month, don't we?
No, the next full board meeting would be July 25th, other than tomorrow, so that's kind of a tight schedule.
Well,
Captain,
who's the committee is there anyone else up on the committee here that made that decision? He said Wakely was involved. I mean, Wakely didn't make the decision, though, right? They vetted
Yeah,
it.
it was,
Go ahead. There was a group of us, myself, Barb, Lieutenant Mish were there. And I guess I should take it a little bit further. We had been in contract with Brenco in 2018 to do a $3 million project. In that project, there were multiple delays, and that project far exceeded the expected completion date, and we had a very difficult time getting the contractor back to complete work at the jail, and became very frustrating. We were limiting our ability to open certain sections because that work was not completed after numerous phone calls. So between this and this other contractor having the ability to either purchase the equipment either from a different source, and I can't really speak too well on that because that conversation had happened between the contractor and Ron Syme from Wakely, but there's some HVAC equipment that they could procure sooner than Brenco can, and that, of course, with the time frame that we have by the end of this fiscal year, the state fiscal year, we felt that it was important that we move forward, even though they weren't the lowest bidder, but we wanted to, they offered us the opportunity to come forward and have some labor that would occur either off shift or on the weekend, and that was never presented or expressed by Brenco. I mean, there was just talk about union contract. And again, going back to my main point was the fact that there were multiple delays in the last contract we had with Brenco.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That sheds a little bit different light on it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Thank you for the information. Okay, Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you, Chair. You indicated that the companies have very similar names. You indicated that Bernco would be willing to work around the clock, correct?
R&E.
No, we're talking about R&E.
I'm sorry. Okay, okay, so we're talking about a $6,000 difference here in a project that is $332,000. And you're saying you have had issues with one of the companies and you have not had issues with the other company?
Correct. We have not entered into contract with R&E. No, we have not.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Duje.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question, this is the jail indigent inmate. Is any of this applicable, or could it be used at the JJC?
No, I don't
No,
think
it's
that
not
that
a
would be-
requirement for the juveniles.
Well, I'm just asking if we can make things easier, possibly at the JJC, with video conferencing.
That would require them to actually be physically transported from that facility to the sheriff's department, inside sort of the booking area of the
So
jail.
we
that
really
would
don't
be
want
very
to.
costly
Okay,
now.
that was my question. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Commissioner Drollet.
I'm sorry, my question been asked.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, are there any other questions on this issue? Okay, at this point, oh, go ahead. Oh, no, I'm sorry, no, I don't see you on there, Joe, I'm sorry. No, I would never do that. You're the second most senior member on the board, so I'd never do that.
Thank you, Chair. May I?
You sure can.
You know, just for the rest of the board, there's always two sides to every story. When we heard the first one, it didn't sound right. $6,000 cheaper, why not go with that? But don't forget, Romano likes grants. This is neutral to us as far as our the general fund is concerned, and I love grants. And the fact that they've had a situation before, I have no problems at all with moving this to full board. He's answered the question as to why they're taking this over the other company, and I'm comfortable with that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else? I don't see anybody else on there. Okay, at this point then, I think the consensus is we're going to take a motion to move this to full board for approval. Please vote. Actually, I need a motion. I need a motion. Commissioner Duje, Commissioner Romano. Sorry about that. Please vote. Mike? Oh, there we go. Item passes 13-0. All right, thank you very much. Okay, moving on now to, thank you. Good to see you, Barb. Good to see you. Moving on now to item 6D, County Jail Project. Sheriff, come on up. Just before you begin, Sheriff, let me just make a statement here before your statement. There's going to be a lot of questions. You know, you've come before us on a couple of occasions. I see a lot of the folks here who did the jail study, and I think I can speak on a whole for the whole board when I say this. Number one, we've understood your needs. You've talked about pretrial services, and pretrial services, the purpose behind pretrial services is that we can, upon arrest, get information on people as quickly as possible, find out if they have a drug issue, find out if they have a mental health issue, and get them into some type of diversion programs before they sit there and wait in the jail before they get in front of court. So we understand that. We completely understand the need for pretrial services. We've also understood the theory of direct supervision. And what direct supervision is where we have our correction officers in among the inmates, and the theory kind of goes when the teacher's in the room, they're better behaved than when they're out. And we understand that. And we've understood some of the structural issues you have, and you've presented 5 different versions of a jail that you want to build. So I think it's safe to say, before the questions begin, that we all agree that something has to be done. The next part of it is going to be how we get it done, and I give you the floor.
All right, I appreciate that, and Commissioners. Some of this you may have already heard, but I felt it was very, very important that we go over it again and do the presentation. We do have all the media here, and I want to make sure that the information that gets out is accurate, the numbers are accurate, who's responsible for the presentation, and this board moving this project forward is accurate. And that's everything that's why I'm here today. First, I'd like to introduce the team. Most of you know, but for the media and other people in the audience, our principals, our partner and architect, we have Mike Malone, we have Andy Sawinski and David Glasson. From New York, STV, David Ziskin. From Pulitzer, Bolliger and Bogart and Associates, Cheryl Gallant. Our consultant that you are all very familiar with, Jim Robertson. and the team that has worked on this for over 2 years, Walt Zimney, our captain, Lieutenant Lori Mish, Sergeant Scott Jones, and Sergeant Bill Ash, which I don't think is here. So, why are we here? Today is the day. You know, I said I wanted to be sheriff. I ran. I won, and I have to make some tough decisions. You have all been voted for your districts, and you are now commissioners, and you're going to be tasked or asked to make probably one of the toughest decisions you ever make as county commissioners. County jails aren't favorable. People don't, like them, don't want to spend money on them, but they are a necessity. So I am going to ask you to approve a project for a new sheriff's office and a 1,518-bed jail facility. Obviously, we don't know what the population is going to be, and we'll address that later, but capacity of that facility and staffing would be adjusted as to the need if and when it opens up. We want adequate staffing. You'll hear from the experts that the current facility is not adequately staffed with time off that employees get. We've always been understaffed since 1986 when I started. There's additional medical care. You have asked what the medical care aspect would be for this project. We've put that in there. That's $717,000, probably increase to our medical contract to provide skilled nursing inside the facility to reduce transports and inmates in hospitals. I'll ask you to approve the ballot language. I know there's some discussion over that, and again, I don't know what's the right way. I don't know anything about languages. I know about corrections, I know about buildings, and I know what direction we need to go. That'll be a decision that this board would have to make. We're going to do the presentation. We're going to provide you with accurate facts and numbers, and in the end, we will take questions from you. And at this point, I'd like to bring up Mike Malone to go through the presentation.
Thanks, Sheriff, and good afternoon, Commissioners. Mike Malone with Partners in Architecture. We're right down here in Mount Clemens, right down the street. I'm going to walk you through the overall agenda and then turn it over to a few of our team members to do some of the presentation. Sheriff gave a nice introduction. I think you all understand why we're here. Jim Robertson is going to kind of review some of the project goals and some of the planning processes that were taking place through the last couple of years, actually. We're going to provide you with a schematic design overview. We were here back in February, and now we're back with a more refined approach. We've got a lot of things figured out and a lot to share, so we're happy to do that. Obviously, estimated project costs, you've seen the numbers out there. We're going to share that with you and kind of recap where those numbers are. We're also going to talk staffing costs and some potential healthcare savings costs, or cost avoidance, I should say. Cheryl is the expert on that, and she's going to share. And then the sheriff is going to give us a nice little closing statement as well. So we're going to start with Jim Robertson here, so I'll turn the floor to him.
Thanks, Mike. Good to see you all again. Thanks for giving us a moment to spend some time with you. Just want to recap a couple of key takeaways from the earlier work that's been done and the work that's led up to the schematic design process. As many of you will recall, the Criminal Justice Master Plan had a series of recommendations. It was a plan that was embraced by many of the policymakers within the criminal justice system. We focused on two key recommendations as a part of that plan. And those recommendations were meant to serve all jurisdictions and citizens of Macomb County, not a limited group. We focused on central booking and assessment process and a full-service pretrial services program, meaning it operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Those two programs and services were meant to focus on a lot of the front-end activity that occurs after a person is arrested and before they get fully immersed within the criminal justice system. They were also intended to improve and enhance public safety. As we got through that process and began to work on the planning process for the new facility, we began to look at deficiencies in the types of beds that were in the current facility. We wanted to make sure as we went through the planning process that we got the right bed for the right type of individual that was now going to be incarcerated. I think it's fair to say and safe to say that the current building, which goes back to the 1950s and is a variety of phases of construction, does not meet the current needs of the inmate population and doesn't support the recommendations in many respects of the Criminal Justice Master Plan. And so what we did is we distributed the number of beds, and as you'll see on your chart, we have a number of beds that are in blue or gray, which are considered reception, general population types of housing units. But then we have our green and red colored rows for the number of beds that are required moving forward with the 15-18 build-out. This is the deficiency that exists between current number of beds and the beds that are needed as we go forward and as we begin to look at how we're managing a very different inmate population today than we had back in the 1950s. The chart to the right-hand side demonstrates that deficiency, which is focusing on mental health, medical detox, special needs, and acute and subacute mental health individuals. The need is 250 when you add the 166 and the 84 together, those two categories. The number of available beds is 31, a dramatic difference between what we need and what is required for our inmate population as we go forward. That's the basis in many respects for this project as we've gone forward, as we've looked towards why is this new building so important and why are new beds so important to managing the risk level of the individuals. I'll turn it back over to Mike.
Thanks, Jim. Back in February, we were here and we shared with you 5 master plan concepts. These were big picture concepts. And the recommended direction at that point was to look at an all-new facility. So from that meeting, we kind of developed that concept further, and we're here to share that. So these drawings and diagrams that we're going to share are based on a new, completely new facility on the current jail site. So I'm going to try to use this mouse here to just kind of point to some of the things on this first slide. Current jail and sheriff's office is obviously to the right. We have Elizabeth and Dunham Streets right here on the side and the top of the slide. This dashed blue line, which is kind of faint, is actually the footprint of the new proposed facility. So you'll see it slightly overlaps with the current building, which the section that it actually overlaps with is the annex building, or we call it the annex. That portion of the building would need to be demolished in order for us to construct this new building. So the concept is the current operation remains full operation. We demolish the annex and then we start construction on the new facility. The proposed site plan in front of you now, again, Elizabeth is on the right side, Dunham is at the top of the screen. The red dash line, which is on this side of the slide, is actually the current footprint of the current jail. And in its place, you'll see there's a large blue, I guess, oval there. It's actually a retention pond, a stormwater retention pond. Anytime we do new development anywhere in the state, and in particular in Macomb County, we have to deal with stormwater, right? We've been getting a lot of rain, so we're all familiar with that. This is our approach with dealing with that. There's another approach of storing stormwater underground, which is extremely expensive. And some of you may be familiar with the 42-2 District Court. Our firm actually designed that building, and we have a similar scenario there. So we saved an abundance of dollars by doing that. So the main entrance to the site is really the same, right off of Elizabeth. We'd come in off of this driveway. Health Department is down here on the bottom, Martha T. Berry. The public entrance is right on the front side of the street, kind of where it is. Right now the public entrance is here. We're pushing back into the site further. So we have a separate public entry, public parking right out in the front. The staff and secure parking is in the back side of the site. So behind this new facility, so this is the new structure, sheriff's office and jail. We park behind that, kind of in front of this warehouse building, and There's also a white dash line here you could slightly see, which is planned for a future expansion. So if there's ever a need to expand this facility, we've situated all the spaces, we've accommodated the infrastructure to accept a future addition. So we don't know when that point will be, but at some point in the future you have a solution that you don't have to undo what you did, and it's a very smart way to spend money. So part of this process or this project is the central intake, and the way that actually circulates is down Dunham Road into the site. There's a pull-through sally port, so you pull in here, door closes, it's secure, you unload, and then you can exit. Staff entries down here at the bottom and public in the front. And there is a lower level parking area underneath this facility for the Sheriff's Department use. The next slide here is an overall building stacking diagram, and we showed you something similar in February. The big difference here is actually we made the building smaller, so we eliminated an entire floor, decreasing the overall height of the building, decreasing the amount of beds, and saving some serious dollars as well. So this first floor plate, we have a plan we're going to share with you in a moment, is where the main entrance is. Above that is the medical and mental health floor, all on one floor. Above that is the female housing floor, so they're on a single floor, which is actually 2 levels. And then we have 5 male housing floors above that. And all the support services, food service, laundry, and all of those things are in the lower level, along with the sheriff's parking. The overall first floor plan is it's a big building here, so it's really squeezed onto this slide, but the overall main sections of this plan is the intake and release is this big section here in the top of the page. So on the site plan, we were driving into a secure sally port that's right through this area here. This is where the vans will park, or sheriff's cars or police cars. They unload right into this secure sally port, and they go through the intake process. We also have a court facility planned for this building, which is right out here in the front, accessible to the public, as well as from the back side of the jail. We have a centralized lobby, which will serve the sheriff's office as well as the jail administration and every other function of the jail, central control, which controls all the ins and outs of the jail per se, is right in the center of the building. Sheriff's down here at the bottom with staff support and some programming support space. In the future expansion, you can kind of see it dashed in there. If we look at a larger plan of the lobby, so our main entrance is here. Anyone coming to visit the office, the sheriff's office, or the jail comes in the same entry point. The left side of the lobby is the sheriff's office, so there's doors here. You can come into a sub-lobby and deal with the sheriff there. There's records. You can come to a window here right off of the lobby. Very easy and efficient. Again, there's the central control of security in this green box. There's a reception desk, which we'll show you an image of, a video visitation here at the top, and then this makes your way to the court and the jail and release office at the top. So an interior perspective view of this, what this could potentially look like. Obviously, it's warming, welcoming. It's a jail. It's a civic building. It's got a sense of stature. The public reception desk is kind of directly in front of the main entrance. This next slide here is actually a little video, a fly-through. So we're at the main entry door currently. We're panning over towards the sheriff's office, which is on the left-hand side. There's some glass doors here that you'll go through to visit with the sheriff and his staff. We spin around the seating area to the public reception desk for information where to go. Central control is right behind that. And back here on this side is actually the video visitation. So if you're coming here to visit, you can go into that room, very open and visible from all parts of the lobby, and you visit with the individuals that are on each of their floors. They actually don't come down for a visit. All right, now we're going to talk about the general housing floor plan. I'm going to hand it off to David Ziskin.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. We talked briefly about how important the special needs areas were in this facility, moving those inmates with special needs into special kind of housing units. This is more the general population, majority of the people that will be here. And for each level, there are 4 housing pods. Each housing pod has 64 beds, 32 beds on the base, and a mezzanine that has an additional 32 beds. This layout also accommodates what we call the mini jail concept, which is a safe and secure way for operations. In the center of the 4 pods is a program space that's shared by the 4 pods. When you go into a pod, you go through a sally port, and in each pod there is outdoor recreation, something that you don't have in your existing building, as well as direct supervision, where the officer has complete view of the whole pod. There are no columns in the pod. Visibility is open. It's open for security reasons and for operations reasons. Go to the next. So here's a view of the pod, and we also have a video, a short video to show you, where the Sallyport entrance, this is where the outdoor recreation is. And one of the things about creating a normative environment is getting natural light, daylight, into the unit. So it'll come in through there, through the end of the pod, as well as through a multi-purpose room where you see glass beyond that. Also, video visiting on the pod itself happens in these booths over here. So it's very open. The officer has complete view to every door in the unit. Mike?
Thanks, David. So we'll move to the exterior imagery of the building. This is a fairly large building. I mean, you have a large building there currently. This new facility is roughly 20 feet taller, I believe, somewhere in that range. So we're designing a very high-performance exterior envelope, which we're going to share some numbers with you in a minute. But the idea here is this is a civic building, very durable, low life cycle cost materials. And you know, we have a combination of several things here. There's metal panels, there's some lightweight reinforced concrete, rain screens, and obviously some glass, which will have security glass designed for that, of course. Here's the side along Dunham. The intake, central intake, is kind of along this side of the building. So back to the building envelope, we have a couple items here. This red box, it says 9.4. This is actually the R value of your current facility. So we calculated the average R value, which is a thermal measurement of thermal transmission through material for energy efficiency. Your current structure with the older structures and the newest structure is an average of 9.4. The column in the middle is actually the state-required energy code, so the Michigan Energy Code, and this is for the exterior wall, envelope of the wall, is an R13. You're at an R9.4. Certain sections of your building are down to an R3.29 is what we figured, and you have some as high as 12.9, which would be the tower. But the average is 9.4. What we're proposing in our new facility is almost double what your average is currently, so an 18 in R18, which is going to translate into energy savings over time. It's all based on how the wall is designed. There's a lot newer technologies now than there were back when a lot of those sections of the building were built. But that's what we're proposing for energy efficiency. Existing facility infrastructure costs. So over the last 10-year period or so, the county has invested approximately $27.5 million into that current jail facility. And the interesting thing here is there was a budgeted amount of about $500,000 per year for those types of improvements. And these are maintenance and, you know, repairs and things of that nature. You've actually expended $27.5 million over the last 10 years. So if we take that same amount, it's an average of about $3.5 million a year that's been put into the facility. If we extrapolate that out to, we picked 2040 as an example, not increasing, not doing any major improvements, but just maintaining the similar things to what you're doing, you're going to spend close to $137 million on just what you have there. And these are escalated numbers each year. So the overall project cost is where we are today. We're about $371 million for the total project cost, which includes the entire site development. So all the site work, the demolition of the current structure that's there, the stormwater management, parking, paving, all that great stuff, some landscaping, of course. The building itself, about $281 million. Some cost escalation. So you know, from this point forward, we'd have to actually get into the next phase of design. There's several phases. You know, design development is next, and then construction documents. That takes a period of time. You have to bid it out, of course, get contractors on board. All that takes time, which stretches out the total timeline of the project. So we're escalating this for 2.5 years. So these numbers, 5% increase, 2.5 years at 5% is roughly $36 million. Contingencies, we always need a construction contingency, fees, furnishings and fixtures and all that great stuff, another $43 million. So that's what the breakdown is of the total project cost. So our expected total cost is right there, $371 million. Now we're going to get to staffing.
Cheryl and I are going to talk a little bit about staffing and operating costs as it relates to sworn staff, pretrial services, and medical mental health services. I'm going to take the first piece of it. The project budget is one piece of cost to the taxpayers over time. Operating cost is something that lives on forever. So as we begin to look at a project of this size, we also want to take a look at staffing and operating costs. Staffing costs are the biggest percentage of the budget, so we're focusing primarily on that. As I approach staffing, I wanted to do a couple of things to establish a baseline to evaluate against for the new staffing that would be required in the new facility at two different capacities, 1250 and 1518. The first approach I took was to look at what's called an availability factor. How much time in the course of a year is an average employee available to work? Typically, there's 2,080 hours required or allowed time to work, but people aren't available all of that time because of vacations, training time, sick time, funeral leave, whatever it might be. So we calculated what is the average amount of time that each employee by class, correctional deputy, sergeant, lieutenant, are available to work. So our first staffing analysis was to take the current posts inside the existing facility and apply this new net annual work hours and to determine what's the delta between how many are budgeted and how many do you need. And that's item number 2, the current staffing with the updated, accurate net annual work hours. And you will see in that calculation, if you do nothing else to the operation of the current building, but just use this new net annual work hours, you are short 21 correctional deputies and 7 correctional sergeant ones. We then looked at the current operations and we said, are we performing and adequately supervising the inmates to minimize their risk, to manage public safety with the right number of posts and the right hours of operations of those posts? So we updated those post assignments inside the current building, and that's item or staffing number 3, the mauve column, I guess you would call it. And we see there that there is an increase that if you're still in your existing building and you operated with updated post assignments an additional post your deficient 46 correctional deputies, 7 correctional sergeants, and 1 correctional lieutenant. We then looked at the staffing required for the new facility, recognizing that we are improving the management and risk of the individuals that are now going to be incarcerated. We're bringing some services in-house with new mental health units, medical units. Cheryl's going to talk about those two a bit. We're no longer using the approach that we're going to take everybody to the hospital. We're going to use correctional deputies to manage those individuals in the hospital. We're going to transport with sheriff's deputies as we're taking them to the hospitals. So what's this new staffing model? We have different capacity levels. The first one is 1,250 beds. That's what we're considering opening capacity. And you're seeing that it's going to require 65 additional correctional deputies over what's currently budgeted. Everything goes back to number 1. 65 additional correctional deputies, 7 additional sergeants, 1 additional lieutenant. And when you go to the 15-18, the full build out at this phase of the project, every correctional sergeants, correctional lieutenants stay the same, correctional deputies goes up another increment. So yes, the number is larger than if you stay in your current facility, but you're providing services in-house, you're managing risk. Go back to that chart about the number of specialty beds that are now in this new facility. 250 specialty beds for mental health, medical detox, special needs individuals, all of your female population as compared to the 31 that you now have available. That is probably your biggest staffing increase in the new facility. I'm going to turn it over to Cheryl. She's going to wrap up this presentation, or this part of the presentation, with a discussion about medical and mental health.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. It's nice to meet all of you. Whoops, how did I do that? Okay. There you go. Yeah, oh, okay. All right, great. As we're all aware, health services is a critical component of jail operations. The jail is now presently providing medical and mental health services in spaces that were constructed in the 1950s to a population with ever-increasing and more complex needs. For example, we now have more women in jail. In the 50s, hardly any women were incarcerated. They're now incarcerated, they're pregnant, they have drug addictions. Those have to be dealt with. Dialysis. Dialysis wasn't even really invented or got going until the late 60s. In the 50s, they weren't prepared for that. We also have an opioid addiction crisis that we're addressing, as well as alcohol withdrawal, as well as individuals with serious mental illnesses. In the 1950s, those folks weren't in the jail, they were in mental health hospitals. So one thing to understand is that Macomb County is not unique. Jails across the country are facing these same issues. So to address these needs, the jail relies on sending inmates off-site to the hospital and to community medical and mental health providers at great expense to the county. Additionally, providing health care off-site presents undue security risk. Just learned recently that an inmate in the hospital attempted to escape. So there are security risks associated with providing off-site health care. It disrupts jail operations, and it also requires the pulling of staff from their primary post or paying overtime to transport and supervise these inmates in their off-site health care. The new jail provides for enhanced on-site health care with a full health clinic where specialty care can be provided, as well as dedicated beds for medical detoxification, and also those with acute mental illnesses. As a result, significant off-site health costs may be avoided in the future. And so looking at the chart, we conservatively, working with the healthcare provider and with Macomb County staff, identified where we might see decreases in some of those costs. And at 1,250 beds, you could potentially avoid over $600,000 in payments. In addition, you'll regain over 5,000 hours in correctional deputy sheriff's time who are being pulled from their primary duties to go transport and supervise inmates. So for example, the emergency room, what that means by 30% is that if we take 30% less inmates to the emergency room, we'll save dollars. We won't have to pay the ambulance, we won't have to pay the emergency room. Same thing if we're able to reduce the length of stay that inmates go to the hospital, we'll save paying deputies overtime, and we'll save the cost of the hospital room. So there's potential to avoid a lot of costs that you're presently incurring.
So, in conclusion, 2016, this board approved a jail needs analysis and criminal justice system assessment that you are all aware of. We spent tax dollars to identify problems that are going on in the Macomb County Jail and to come up with solutions. As you heard, there was 11 recommendations, but we focused on pretrial services, central intake, and a better mental health and medical facility in the confines of the jail. For years, not only from this board, from community leaders, and from citizens of Macomb County, I get asked, what are you doing to fix the problems at the Macomb County Jail? January of 2018, this board awarded Partners in Architect the architectural engineering services, programs, and schematic design for building and operational cost for this project, and we approved tax dollars for that. In winter of 2019, I was before this board asking for approval for additional funding because the size of this project increased, and you approved additional funding to move this project forward. So I ask each one of you, do we need a new jail? And be honest with yourselves. If you believe we don't need a new jail, then please state so publicly and let me know, and I will operate the 63-year-old Macomb County Jail for the remainder of I am sheriff and leave it for whoever comes in after me. Again, since our last presentation, we reduced, as you heard, the size of the facility from 1,672 beds to 1,518. Again, this proposal kept in mind funding, kept in mind staffing. We're not building a Taj Mahal. It's a civic building. You have to remember it's a government building. Not only are inmates coming to spend time there, but citizens of Macomb County are coming to the sheriff's office to do public business. So please keep that in mind. Yes, you could tell me and ask me our count is down. We are starting to creep up. Today we were at 960 inmates. But remember, in 2000 through 2005, our daily population was 1,500, and we were overcrowded all the time. Can anybody guarantee me that that will not happen? I cannot guarantee myself. And if you ask me to build a smaller facility, I do not want to take that chance because that will open up, and then every one of you and every citizen can blame the sheriff for not properly accounting for what his needs would be. We know we have a problem there. You all know that, and you acknowledge it. In the earlier presentation this year, I kind of reinforced that this was our project. This is our jail. As commissioners, you're elected to serve those people. As sheriff, I am elected. Your constituents are my constituents, because I do have all of the whole county. So, but if you don't want to take ownership in this project, I'll step right up. I will take ownership in this project because I believe this is the correct solution. For years, we have had problems. And now it is up to us to make the right decision. And let's let the citizens of Macomb County decide what direction we need to go in. That's what democracy is all about. Give them that opportunity. That's what you are elected for. Just a reminder, 2005, those of you that were on the board in 2005, the prior sheriff, Mark Hackle, was in front of this board. There was 26 of you at the time, and you approved the project. At that time, it was $98 million. Nobody wanted to seek the funding. So here we are, 14 years later, and now we're at 371 millions. If we don't at least attempt to make some changes and try and move this project forward, the costs are going to go up, the problems are going to continue, and come down the road, who's going to be here? Who's going to make the decision? Are we going to have to spend more taxpayers' money to come up with a proposal? I truly believe we had the right team in place. We came up with the right solutions, and now it is up to you to make this tough decision on where we go from here. Thank you, and we will entertain questions.
Thank you, Sheriff. Before we get to the questions, this is a presentation, so I'd like to receive and file, if we could, a motion with respect to that. Commissioner Sauger, supported by Commissioner Drollet. Please vote to receive and file. Oh, you want to wait till after? Okay, we'll make the motion. We have the motion on the floor. Okay, we'll go ahead with the questions, starting with Commissioner Drollet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Sheriff, for the presentation. I guess one of the things I was expecting, a few weeks ago that we'd come forward with a proposal to build the new jail. And I wasn't necessarily ready for there to be the .2 mils or the component of the jail, or the proposal rather, that would fund operations. How do we move from being a proposal to build a new jail to being a proposal to build and supplement operations of a new jail?
That's an excellent question, and I thought I brought that up this whole year, because you guys have asked me, yes, we can build it, but how are we going to staff it? This is how we're going to staff it. This was always part of the presentation we had when I did small groups, and the presentation I did earlier. Is my 5 minutes up? I guess I got to go.
That's the other one. That's the chair.
I'm getting gone. No. The operational has always been part of this process. We have to have the right staffing. We've never had the right staffing.
Well, since the 80s.
Right. So here I am going to present to you a new facility. Why would I not bring forwards to staff it appropriately? That has always been part of the conversation, part of the presentation. This is twofold. I remember Commissioner Kleinfeld, how are we going to staff this facility?
But the language that was proposed said, it includes the word more efficient. When people hear the word more efficient, they mean we're going to do more with less. Yeah. But instead, we funded out of our general fund operation, would no longer be sufficient. We're going to hire 86 more people. It's going to take us extra millage to operate. Is it really more efficient if it's costing more and taking more people to do what we currently do?
Okay. And I'm going to stay out of the millage and the ballot language, because that is not my expertise. My expertise is sheriff. I'm a law enforcement and corrections guy. So I could tell you that the facility is needed, and this is the proper amount of people that we need to staff it. So the millage language, I would hope that, if this board approves this project, that could be worked out, that you would be comfortable enough to put that in front.
Yeah, I don't want to focus just on that language. I mean, from the perspective of even talking to folks about this proposal, when we tell them it's going to improve efficiency, and we're told that it's going to cut down on hospital visits, going to cut down on transit costs, and then they're going to ask me, great, how much are we going to save? And I'm going to have to say, oh, actually, it's going to cost us a lot more.
Yeah. Well, the problem that we have is, again, if we do nothing, I guess I'll come back and I'm going to ask you for about 43 new employees, so I can properly supervise what I have over there, and I can reduce the risk and liability of bad things happening inside the confines of the jail. Again, if we were properly staffed at that number, this wouldn't be a big number then, and it probably would not be the topic of discussion. But we have to play catch up, and again, I'm always the bearer of bad news. So here I am. This is the facility. This is what it's going to cost the staff.
Okay. And if I understood correctly, the gentleman who spoke earlier, our current jail does not have provide outdoor recreation, and this new jail would have the opportunity on every floor.
Every floor, yes.
Okay.
Every housing unit, yes.
Wonderful. Okay, the last question I have is, if we've been having to patch through as long as you've had, and with the needs that we've had, somebody could argue that the election is going to cost us $400,000 to put this on the ballot, and if we want democracy to really work, we should just wait till 2020 and put it on the ballot then, when it would save us $400,000. How would you respond to that?
Well, here's how I would respond to that, is because I am the individual that is on TV every time something bad happens. I'm the one that keeps getting asked, what are you doing to fix the problems inside the Macomb County Jail? I went, we found a solution. Am I to sit on this solution till 2020? I'm here to bring it to you. This is what you got elected for. If I wait till 2020, and what happens if something bad happens between now and 2020? Sheriff Wickersham knows he's got a problem and is not taking any action on how to fix it. That's not going to happen. All my lawsuits, they're always looking at me for deliberate indifference. I know something, and I'm not taking action. Well, that's not going to happen, because I'm not going to be that guy. I know we got problems. I know how to fix it. This is a fix. Let's at least put it in front of the voters. If they vote no, then we got to come back and we got to come with Plan B, because this problem is not going to go away. 2005 it was a problem, 2019, and whatever date you want to pick into the future, it's still going to be a problem. So Macomb County has to address it.
Just one last question. Do you believe that right now we are providing adequate medical care?
We are providing adequate medical care.
Okay.
In a outdated facility.
Right. And so this is not a question, but yesterday on a news website, I saw a video of several of your officers pursuing a suspect that was evading arrest. And I want to just note, after watching that video, how courageous and proud I am of your officers in that department, because that video exemplified, I think, what is good police work. So thank you for that, and thank you for answering the questions.
And thank you, Commissioner. We appreciate that, and that not only outside, but inside this facility, too. The men and women that work in there do a
Thank you,
great job.
Mr. Chair.
That wasn't so bad. Commissioner Carabelli.
I'm ready.
Thank you, Mr.
Bring it
Chairman.
on. Here it comes.
Just getting
The
started.
Taj Mahal. I can hear it.
First question I have for you. Last year, we added how many additional deputies?
13.
And I'm asking, the number that you guys used in this was around the same time. Was those 13 deputies included in the numbers you came up for what you needed?
No, this is strictly to work inside the facility. These are non-sworn personnel.
Okay. So this has nothing to do with the deputies in the last few years that we've added on?
No. No.
That was wishful thinking.
Yep.
If I have some, first of all, I have some architectural questions.
I'm out.
And how this stuff is set up. Who talked about the visual of every inmate? Who was the gentleman that spoke of that? And if somebody can help with the computer screen and pull this up so I can have an understanding. I look at this, and I understand the concept that you came up with, but I look at page 473 of your slide. So in the bottom, it says GP Housing Unit Day Room. Okay, great. I look at doors with little teeny windows. How the heck are you going to watch the prisoners?
The prisoners are, the detainees are out in the housing unit. It's when they're in their rooms, the door is closed, the officer walks by and can look into the room to make sure everything is safe in the room.
And Sheriff, you're going to have to help me with this. One of those things that I bought in with this visual supervision, or however it's called, or direct supervision, was that at all times they could see, and they don't have to wait for a guard to come by, and then after they come by, because they figure out how many times they come by and how long it is to the next time, that they can do bad things. That I thought this visual was, as I sit there, I could look visually and see every inmate in their bunk, what's happening in those rooms.
Back it up to the. Which one? Yeah. Can you blow that? Do we have that one blowed up? All right. So obviously at night, they're going to be in their rooms. And if they're locked down, you're going to have the one individual that's going to be there. And they're going to be mobile. They're going to be moving around. Where currently, this individual leaves and is nowhere. Doesn't hear, doesn't see anything that's going on. That's indirect supervision. Direct supervision is daytime, afternoons, they're integrating, they're supervising, they're watching. At nighttime, when they go in there.
When does these bad things usually happen?
When the officer leaves the facility. When the inmate knows that the officer is not coming back for 1 hour to do a round. That's when the bad things happen. Here, the officer never leaves. The officer is right there.
And I'm asking because I don't know, so please bear with me. Why are these not the old John Wayne movie gates where you take the tin can and you rub it against it.
Yeah, and
you
I
see
know
through.
that's what you want, but
No, I'm
that's,
asking.
that's.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah,
That's why I'm asking.
That's not how corrections has been in over 30 years.
Well, John Wayne
If
hasn't
that's
been
what you
around
want, we
for
got
quite a while, too.
1950s, we still got the bars, and I can shell out the Kool-Aid in the steel cups.
Okay, so now if we can go back to slide 473 and let's talk architectural. It looks like a wood grain ceiling on there.
Excuse me?
I guess this would be more for the architect than yourself.
Both architects.
Oh, I
yeah.
apologize.
But I'm older. The ceiling is an acoustical ceiling. The wood, they have wood acoustical ceilings, and we've done this before in housing units. It reduces the noise.
I completely understand how
Okay.
it works and what it's used for. I'm just saying, is this the most cost-effective way to do it?
It's not necessarily wood. It could be a wood look ceiling. It's like a perforated panel.
Well, I'm not looking for anything to be painted that has to be repainted. Let me put it to you that way. So the most cost-effective material
Gotcha.
is what I personally, I can't speak for any other board members. And I'd like to keep going on that if we could. So like I go into the page 470 on your slide, entrance lobby. Very nice lobby in the whole bit, and I see how we're separating tiles with different size tiles. Remember, we're asking to go to the voters to approve something, and, you know, I'm okay with cement floors that are polished. They do the exact same thing, there's no difference of using them, and it's actually cheaper, and I'm wondering why we're not looking at that. And I've mentioned this before when we were starting this process, that I'm not looking so much of an architectural gem for people to hang their hat on. I'm looking for functionality at the best possible dollar for the taxpayers.
Yeah, and keep in mind, this is schematic design level documents. We don't have a product specified. It's to show that there's a hard surface there. It could easily be polished concrete. We do a lot of that type of work as well. We're gonna have a mixture of materials in there. But we wanna have low life cycle and low maintenance cost materials, and that's what we'll be providing.
And just as a point of note, that during our workshops, we talked about different material that could be used, and especially for the exterior, you know, making sure it's maintenance.
That's where I was going next.
Excellent, yeah, and some of the things that they brought up were glass buildings. But we talked about it, and they actually said the glass building is the most expensive material to use. So, you know, I said, let's not go with glass.
And I'm going off experience with Lynn. She comes in for hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions over years for tuck pointing and all this other stuff. I'm just looking long-term. If it's precast concrete, I don't care. So I guess I'm just looking at it as far as not value engineering, but the value of is, I'm not so much worried about what it looks like personally. I'm more about the functionality of what you're trying to achieve.
Right. We will get that functionality, but let's all keep in mind, it is a civic building, it is the sheriff's office. And not only do prisoners go there, but our citizens go there to conduct business. Just keep
Sheriff,
that.
no disrespect, we
I
can
know.
agree to disagree.
I know, and
I'm okay
Yep.
with disagreeing. This type of supervision, what's it called again? Direct supervision. How, and I guess to the experts, how long has that been utilized?
The first direct supervision jail I did was for the Federal Bureau of Prisons in 1977.
So it's
And
been around.
It's been around, and National Institute of Corrections in Colorado deems it as the safest and most secure way to operate a jail. And pretty much all jails today are becoming direct supervision.
Okay.
The officer controls the housing unit, not an inmate, but the officer.
Okay. With that said, and it's hard to get in the mind of an inmate of why they do what they do when they do it, is there a percentage that I can say, you know, this should reduce incidents by 85%, 50%? And again, I know you can't get in the psyche, but on a statistical thing, the jails that were switched over to the direct supervision that weren't that, they had X amount of incidents.
From my experience, there's a dramatic reduction in assaults. We designed a facility out in Iowa that had many assaults. In the last 3 years of operation, they've had one assault, inmate to inmate, all direct supervision. We designed a facility that this group had an opportunity to visit in Syracuse, New York. It opened 25 years ago, direct supervision. In the 25 years, they've had 5 assaults. And how many assaults do you have here?
In 2017, 70? 70 assaults.
Let me also just offer an observation. I'm not an architect, I'm a planner, but I have an operations background. And I'm old enough to remember when direct supervision wasn't the preferred method of operations, and was fortunate to work with 2 counties in my career that went to direct supervision. And we experienced in each one of our facilities a dramatic, greater than 50% reduction in inmate-to-inmate assaults, staff-to-inmate assaults, inmate-to-staff assaults, and a level of violence and graffiti and inmate misuse inside the building, which is why the National Institute of Corrections adopted this philosophy. The American Jail Association, the American Correctional Association, all adopted this as a policy statement that this is the recommended management and operational philosophy that jail should undertake.
And I'm not disagreeing, and it's not so much the assaults I'm looking at, Sheriff, I'm looking at individuals hurting themselves.
Right.
And that's what I wanted to refer to, the millions of dollars that is being expended, and I'm looking at the county saving long-term of eliminating these and what percentage I can say, hey, it's gonna take away extra percent of this happening.
Just to give you the perspective, in 2017, there were 70 inmate-on-inmate assaults that we handled inside the facility. There were 14 inmate-on-staff assaults. 2018, we had 32 inmate-on-inmate assaults and 15 inmate-on-staff assaults in the facility.
Okay, the last question I have, and I yield the floor, is the cost. I looked at the contingency fee, and I'm trying to figure out if it's 13.322%, or how do you come up with this number after adding this up? What percent are you saying is a contingency?
The construction contingency, I think we had, I think there's 5% in there for that.
How, are you?
There's about 11.5%, so there's
It's
6%.
It's about 13.3% is the numbers that I came up by taking the site work, the building, with the added 2.5% added to add to that of a total of 327,579. 10% would put me at 360 million, and I went and continued to do the math, and I'm at 13.
Yeah, it's
3.22.
yeah, actually it's 13.5%. It's 5% construction contingency. There's a 2.5% for FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and 6% for professional fees. It's 13.5%.
Okay, we'll sit down and go through that, because I want to see the last buildings that we did, what percent we were at, because I don't recall what those numbers were. So I just want to make sure we're in the same ballpark. It just seemed a little high to me. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Chairman Smith.
Thank you. Tony, welcome.
Hey.
Listen, let's start with this. I think you know that almost everybody here, and maybe everybody here, agrees that jail's a problem and that we need to do something. I don't think there's one person that doesn't think that we need to do something here. Some of the questions will just come from the fact that you mentioned this is a tough decision, and you want to make sure that if this goes in front of the public, that we're at least have asked all the right questions, and we fine-tuned it to the point where, where it should go in front of the public. So I want to go backwards with the direct supervision, because I was a part of the original when we sat down and talked about it, and I swear I remember that the direct supervision that they showed originally was more like Commissioner Carabelli was speaking of. You had an officer that was there, but you could basically see into all the cells, and it's different now than at least at the beginning. And I don't know when it changed. It could have changed a long time ago, but I saw those, and I just want to make sure that direct supervision is direct supervision, and basically the only thing about direct supervision is that person that's walking around, and that when we talk about these other facilities that have reduced assaults, which is obviously what we need to do here, that's not a combination of being able to directly see in and someone walking around, and that these facilities are, you know, the little window doors that people, you know, just, that there's an officer on site, and that's the
different tours
reason.
that we took, this is the design that we saw with direct supervision.
Okay.
What you may have seen, and you know, again, I can't remember when we started this project, but, you know, there are some dormitory styles that have direct supervision where, you know, you're able to see everybody.
That was the original, and I think most commissioners probably will say that when they think of direct supervision, that's what they think of, right? So this is kind of a little bit of a learning experience.
And it is a lot better than what we're doing now. That's
I
what you
agree.
have to remember.
I agree. So one of the things that I think is a benefit, obviously, of the central intake with the mental health and the arraignment with an attorney there is that the theory is that a lot of people that are in jail don't really need to be there, right? They need a mental health facility, or a lot of them could be personally bonded out, but they're not originally, right? And then they get bonded out. So that being said, I guess my question is, I mean, why are we, well, let's go back. We're down to 909, where a couple of years ago we were at capacity and you know, having to let prisoners go. Is there a reason for that right now? Do you know? Is it just cycles of like the moon or the, you know, I mean.
We're creeping back up now.
Okay.
And again, talking to some of the circuit court judges, I think there's a push in Lansing, you know, for some, you know, there's some legislation out there, whether it's going to be cash bond, you know, basically you're either in or you're out. But to try and pinpoint it, I don't have the exact answer. And the one thing, though, I do hear a lot is, well, your population's down because marijuana is legalized. Well, I could tell you there probably wasn't too many people in the jail for marijuana unless they're driving a semi-truck with a full load of marijuana in the back. So,
right.
I just, you don't know if there's, you know, the judges see the population, they get the statistics, they know how many beds they have available because they're still on that bed allocation plan, so.
So I guess my question, I think this has been discussed in there, but I wish that there was a way that we could kind of phase a section in and leave an area for more, because we really don't know what this new central intake and what it's going to do, and if it's going to reduce it significantly, where we're building, you know, overbuilding. You don't want to overbuild. I mean, the JJC with some addition of different processing is only, what, half full right now, right?
Totally understand, but we have to take a look at what the experts told us this population could be, what we could do to reduce the population. And again, do any of you want to approve something and maybe get this approved that on the day that it opens up, it's overcrowded?
Okay.
I don't want to take that chance. I mean, obviously, we don't have to staff it, but the ability's there. Right. And the ability's there for the next 30, 40 years. Hopefully, the next sheriff won't have to come in front, whoever it may be,
and again,
to ask for a new
again,
jail.
I think that we need, I mean, we've talked about all the money we spend, and not only that, the liabilities, you know, not just the costs every year of maintenance, which, you know, you have to say that the new building will require maintenance too over the years. So, I mean, that's kind of not $137 million savings. It's a portion of that, because as the new building ages, you'll need that too. But nonetheless, I have two questions left. One of them is, since Deputy Executive Deldon's here, I just want to ask, is the executive, Mark Hackle behind this? All right. It's nice to hear. Right? I mean, it's nice to hear that. I mean, we would assume, but I just wanted to hear that. That's.
I mean, history will show, and Sheriff Wickersham alluded to it earlier, but 15 years ago, Sheriff Hackle was here advocating for jail expansion.
All right. Thanks. And I know there's been some questions too, and this has nothing to do with you, but about the language of the proposal. And I just want to ask, since our corporation counsel's here, we sent a letter to you just questioning it, because the one thing I don't want to do is put something on the ballot that's going to get challenged, and if we put it on, I want to make sure it's going to go on and stay on, and we're not going to have a sideshow issue with the language of it. And it's been brought up, and I just want to ask you, as you've looked at this in the neutral language. Oh, I didn't even get that far. All right. Save that question and think about your answer. All right. That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. Going back to Commissioner Carabelli's thing about direct supervision, why not just videotape those jail cells so we don't have to worry about, you could watch them all the time, 24/7, without having them hide behind a door? Just a basic question from somebody simple, but, I mean, why don't we just videotape those jail cells so we don't have to worry about peering in and walking down the row and sticking our head in there?
Probably
Having a-
very costly. So very costly.
Okay.
And then you have to have your officers that are gonna be watching those monitors all the time, can't take their eyes off of it, because if something does happen, then they have to get in. So,
Chair, can I offer a comment?
oh, please. I said, don't be shy.
No. That's a question that I think I've been asked probably more so than any other question in my career about direct supervision. Why not just put in cameras and have somebody watch those cameras? Here's the issues as I see them operationally. A camera is a great tool to enhance staff. All it does is observe a behavior. It doesn't manage or control that behavior. A camera, I used to have a friend that used to say, I never saw a camera jump off the wall and stop an inmate fight. It merely identifies the behavior. Staff still have to respond to that behavior. What direct supervision does is it gets the staff there sooner and it allows the officer to be in charge of that housing unit, not the strongest or the most powerful or influential inmate. Cameras are a great tool. We see them in facilities. They are only an enhancement to proper staffing.
But wouldn't it help save the time? Is if somebody's hanging in a jail cell, you're not going to see him. You go through and peer through a crack in the wall because the door's shut. If you have a video camera in there, seeing you can alert the staff who's right on the floor, right? I mean,
I have seen cameras used in high-risk cells, in what are often called sobering cells or detoxification cells, those housing areas. I've seen cameras used in the day room spaces of the facility. But in general population housing units, staff are required to make rounds periodically. And with an effective classification system that identifies the risk of the individual, they are then placed in the appropriate housing units, and their risk is managed by the appropriate trained staff in that housing unit. Cameras can be used. They're not a sole, you can't replace staff with cameras.
and the sheriff said this, and I totally feel for him. You don't know what you're getting when you check in, right? They're coming off the street. You don't know what they are. You don't know what their mindset is.
Absolutely.
So you put them in a cell without keeping an eye on them. I like the direct supervision. I thought we could keep an eye on them the whole time. Would be less prone to have them hurt themselves.
Direct supervision is not direct observation. Okay. Direct observation is I can physically see inside all parts of that housing unit. Yeah. And the only way to achieve that is to move around.
All right, I think that's where our misunderstanding jumped the tracks a little bit. So thank you for the information on that. I appreciate it. The medical side of things, sounds like we're gonna plus up our medical presence there. Will we have a medical director basically running a small medical clinic in our jail? They want to send them to the hospital for every little thing? Can someone speak to how that's?
Well, that would be the goal, but Cheryl, you want to explain what goes on?
The appropriate staff,
Why don't
health
you end
staff
okay.
on site. There is a health
Well, we have
care-
appropriate health staff now.
Right, you'll have additional staff as well, working the medical units. The medical housing will have healthcare staff assigned to the detox, to the skilled nursing. You'll have mental health professionals assigned to the mental health housing.
Currently, one of the issues is that when we take somebody to the hospital, they stabilize or treat whatever's going on. And the reason they'll stay longer in the hospital is because we don't have that skilled nursing, we don't have the proper facility that the individual could be returned and could be supervised and cared for inside the jail.
Would they be our employees, or would they be someone we contract? Currently, we contract.
Currently contract. It would be additional staffing to staff a skilled nursing facility 24/7. So there's still maybe times where individuals are going to have to go out via the ambulance.
Sure.
But if for some minor things, if we could handle it in-house, it saves us pulling a deputy off the road, putting him in the car, taking him and sitting in the emergency room till the individual's cleared and bringing him back. An individual that does get admitted, and then gets stabilized, and if the doctor believes they could be treated back at the jail, which currently they can't, and the skilled nursing is available. They'll be sending the prisoner back to the jail sooner, which would cut down on the amount of time deputy sheriffs have to be there supervising. And if you've ever had a loved one in the hospital with an inmate in the room next door, I don't know how that goes, but we just had one female, obviously had to use the restroom, tried to overpower a nurse, and the deputy had to take her down. So, we're looking also at trying to keep people secure and safe.
The mental health aspect of having someone in the jail is going to probably help you a lot too. Sorting through some of these people coming through, is that? I mean,
Yep.
'cause, I mean, that's been part of our
And
problem,
again,
right?
that's what we're trying to do, is identify those individuals that are high risk and make sure we put them appropriately, classify them, or put them in appropriate housing where we can appropriately supervise them. Like I said before, there's a lot of times, though, that individuals that come through that, there are no indicators, they don't tell you anything, and
Okay.
that's when the bad things happen. Jump in there.
When someone new is coming into the facility that, let's say, hasn't been there before, we do have what is called reception housing, and that's open housing. It's more like a dormitory style. They're not in rooms. They're out in a unit that has beds out in the unit. So that's direct supervision, but it's also a specialty kind of housing. Look, the overall approach here is to attempt to reduce recidivism, reduce the repeat offender. And so the new facilities that we're designing, that are being designed around the country, are the direct supervision model, and it reduces tension. It keeps the facility operating by the operators and not by inmates, and it's a safe and secure way to do it. Again, we want to reduce recidivism. It's about philosophy of having a humane environment, and again, the whole goal is that we don't get the repeat offender.
Well, we haven't lost control of our jail over there, so we've maintained that. So it's not an issue for us losing control of our jail. Our sheriff and the professionals there have maintained control of our jail. So it's not an issue. We're trying to correct something that we've lost control of our jail. And we're talking about just how to supervise, so mainly we don't have anybody hurting themselves because we can't see what they're doing. To me, that's probably the biggest reason we probably got to do that.
And I don't think he meant to say that we don't have control over the jail. There is a better way to manage the population. Again, there are things that are, the title is called Rock Boss. That means you run the cell, and our officers are trying to identify the Rock Boss. That's
Okay.
going to take things away from everybody. And when the officers aren't there,
That's more that direct supervision, the guy on
that's where
maintain-
direct supervision is going to help, where you can take back control of the unit.
I mean, helping
Yeah.
recidivism makes the stay there unpleasant, so you don't come back. That's generally my view of
That
it.
ain't working.
No, that doesn't
That
work,
ain't
sir.
working.
No,
Sorry.
no. It's a, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Sheriff.
Commissioner Myjak's device isn't working too well, so with permission, I'd like to, he was before Don Brown, but okay.
Thanks, Sheriff,
So
for
go ahead,
coming here today
Commissioner
and
Myjak.
everybody who showed up. So, just a couple questions here. What are we doing right now in the jail with maybe your policies and procedures with nonviolent criminals who have drugs, substance abuse issues, mental health issues? Because there's a lot of folks in the jail who have those problems. And why can't we right now, why doesn't this system work differently in a better way where we could take people who are in the jail now and send them to a mental health hospital, hospital that deals with substance abuse, drugs, alcohol? Help me to understand that a
Sure,
little
so we
bit,
try
please.
to, through community corrections, through community corrections, we try to assess those. Now, you remember, I'm just the keeper of the body, so we got to talk to the judges. Mental health hospitals aren't out there. There aren't beds available. But if they are, we're looking to get people out that can get out. But it has to come from the court. It has to come through the judges.
So that starts
That's
with
not
the
my,
courts.
yeah.
So now, because of the problems in our society, in our state, with reduced funding for mental health. I believe the closure of mental health hospitals from 20 years ago, there's more of a reliance of mental health individuals coming to the jail.
Jails
So
are the
now
mental
we
health-
got to provide. Now, the
Jails are the mental health hospital.
Right.
Yep.
And so there's no other place for mental health people to go, is what you're saying?
Well,
At
the
the
ju-
current state of
at-
the criminal justice system.
When the judge is assessing where this individual and how they can protect the community, depending on the charge, that's totally up to the court, and I honor the judge's wishes. If there were options out there, by all means, I'd rather have them somewhere else than inside the facility.
Okay. And then the other question is individuals in the jail who are there because of substance abuse problems. Why aren't our numbers in the jail smaller for that? Help me to understand that. Like, how many people in the
Jump
jail
in here, Barb.
do we
Don't be
have
shy.
right now that have that, and are we doing our best to keep?
We're trying.
We're trying, right. So help me to understand that, where we're at now and what the new jail proposal would be, please.
Right, sorry. With community corrections, we receive funding from obviously the state of Michigan and from the county that we use to divert those individuals, as many as possible. Our numbers have increased, I can't even tell you how much over the course of the last 5 years. Our opiate issue is our issue, and we are doing everything we can. The beds are at capacity in terms of putting people from the jail into those programs. However, there is a large population that are undivertible. They are assaultive. They've had poor behavior in placements that we've put them in before.
These are what, violent criminals? Is that how you would classify them
Their
as?
charges are of a more assaultive nature. They don't get along well
Gotcha.
with others. There are, a multitude of issues that can cause that. But as much as we increase our availability as in terms of substance abuse treatment beds and things of that nature, and the mental health programs that we do have to divert into, there's always going to be a population, and that population is growing, that we can't put anywhere. They're
can't
either
put-
not
right.
eligible for it, they have chronic medical problems that we couldn't place because of the needs that they have. There's always going to be that population, and again, it's getting bigger. So, but so are our numbers in placements. So it's again, we might be at like a low level now in terms of who's in the jail, but that's not going to stay that way.
Okay, thank you, Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The irony is with the money that we would be investing for changes in intake screening and the way that we treat, that's ultimately going to stay down the road is going to save the state of Michigan. We're the ones paying, but ultimately down the road, it's going to save the state, I would assume. Be nice if they could kick in a little to help us out here.
Boy, if there was a grant out there, Commissioner Romano would be happy, wouldn't he? Wouldn't you? I look and.
My
Sorry.
first question is in your memo, in one of your memos, you said if the local jurisdictions do not participate in central intake and booking, the number of staff required would be reduced. If we would be adding staff to deal with the central intake and booking, wouldn't we charge the communities that are agreeing to have us take over the booking for that purpose to offset for the cost of that staff? Oh, I stumped him.
You didn't stump me. That charging, that wouldn't be to charge the community. Again, you guys have the ability to charge each community
But
for.
if you're taking over something that a community is paying for, we do
Yes.
that with Comtech, we do that with several services, we have to regain our costs. If we're expanding and thereby saving them money and getting rid of something that they're providing, we always try to recoup the cost from them to do that, at least part of the cost, and there's been no discussion on that. How many, and it may be in here somewhere, how many of the staff were you looking at for intake, for increase in intake?
Do you have that?
I'll have to go to my memory. I believe that the increase in the intake and reception area was in the range of a 30% increase, looking at a 24 hours a day, 7-day-a-week operation.
Okay, could you give me an actual number of bodies that we'd be increasing, because I'm at doing 30% of what? I just need a number. There's an increase. We have an 86 number for total positions that was thrown at us. I need to know how many increase of those increases would be in central intake.
Okay, I can't pull that out, but we
And
can
I
get-
don't expect
No.
you to, and I'm not going to hold you to do that right
You
now.
can hold me
Okay.
to it. Currently, we have 5 individuals working the booking desk currently. The intake and assessment, they're telling me it would add 6. I'm sorry, the number would go to 6, so it would be 1 additional staff.
And that is taking over the central intake for all of those
That's-
cities?
Remember that this is the booking process. This is when the people come in, the inmates would come in. Again, it's the processing, it's the fingerprinting, it's asking the questions, it's changing the clothes, taking the property. We're currently doing that. So,
But in your memo, you referred to if local jurisdictions do not participate in central intaking and booking, meaning they're doing, the ones that are
Right.
doing it themselves.
yes.
I'm trying to figure out if they decide to use us, what is our increase in cost because of that?
For the new facility, then, it would be 1 correctional personnel, 24/7. So if we're going to use, Steve, if we were using 4.2 or 5.3 FTE, whatever that cost is, I don't have. Yes, you stumped me.
Okay.
So
Well,
I'm not going to try and make
I'm
it.
going to be honest with you. If you cannot give me something today, I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
I'm not going to hold
Yeah,
you to, but it does occur to me, we charge more services for East Point than other communities, but that's a different argument for another day. But we do, if we take on a service that is provided by a community, generally speaking, it may be less expensive for them to contract with us than to do it themselves. But we usually try to recoup the cost of what it will cost us.
Right.
So I don't know how many communities would be switching over. I think you've listed in here some of them.
There was, that had interest was Chesterfield and Roseville, and that was under the old,
Okay.
Chief Berlin. So again, I don't know
All right,
if
so-
they would still be interested. I think they are. But that is
Okay.
something we'd have to look at.
All right, and this question doesn't necessarily affect my decision on this issue. It's just looking at some things down the road, and I will be honest with you, more than any other issue, I'm getting unsolicited opinion given to me back in my district that has surprised me. And I will tell you, we have a lot of work ahead of us. I will also say, I do believe that there's a need for a new jail. You asked that question. I'm going to say on the record, I do believe that there's a new jail. Where and how we get there, I'm not exactly sure where I am on this, but I know that something has to go on the ballot. So I'm not looking to try to figure out finances where the county's just suddenly going to cover it. But I wanted to know, is it more expensive to build a tower up than it is to build a more sprawling facility? And does the operational cost between the two differ?
Which one do you want first?
It doesn't matter to me. I mean,
While they're discussing, you talk.
I don't need numbers, just yes and no would be fine.
Traditionally, we used to always assume that a high-rise construction was more expensive from an operational perspective to operate because of how you're moving employees. What we have found now is that in many cases, there's no dramatic difference between those operations because of the types of elevators that are now being used, the dedicated elevators, and having staff assigned to the housing units.
Okay, and then just building a facility, generally speaking. Building a more sprawling facility that's fewer floors versus building a tower, is there a difference? Is there one that's more expensive than the other?
There is a difference between the two. Like a high-rise building, obviously we have stairs, we have elevators, like Jim alluded to, but we have a smaller footprint, which have a smaller foundation, so we're
Right.
disturbing less. And operationally, you're not spread out as much in a taller building. So there would be some efficiencies there.
So would you say it's a
moving-
wash?
I would say it's close. I mean, we
Okay.
haven't studied that, but one of the challenges also is finding the the real estate.
I'm aware.
you know,
Listen,
yeah.
when I said I'm going to ask these couple of questions, it's not necessarily affecting how I'm voting on this particular thing. I'm just trying to get some important background information.
Sure. And one other thing, if I could add, on the envelope side, so a high-rise building, we have a smaller roof area, and most of your heat loss is through the roof typically. On a bigger building, obviously, you have a bigger roof.
Okay. And when we were looking at the operational costs with the bodies and everything, did we deduct the anticipated savings on power and energy from the cost operationally? We said we're going to be a lot more efficient that way. Did we deduct those costs from operational costs?
No, we have not considered those in our formulas.
Okay.
We have an answer on intake. We have an answer on
Okay.
intake. I didn't know I had a document with me, but I confirmed with Captain Zimney. The new intake and assessment and release area requires one additional post, which equates to 5 employees.
Okay. So the statement that if the local jurisdictions do not participate, the number of staff required would be reduced, is that correct? Because even if they didn't participate, are you saying we still need that many employees in there?
Yes.
So that probably would be a statement we would be correcting in the memo.
Which memo are you reading? Because it's been
It
a
is,
while.
let's see. It's not that one.
It may be pre-trial, Sheriff.
You know, I'll have to find it to give it to you. I think it's, I think this is it. Hold on. If local, this is it. It's May 28, 2019, and it says if local jurisdictions do not participate in central intake booking, the number of staff required will be reduced accordingly. And from what he's saying, you really need that number of staff whether they participate or not.
It's community corrections.
It's community corrections.
Right, if we weren't screening everyone that was coming through for the
Yeah.
entire county, we would reduce the amount of full-time staff by that amount accordingly, so it would be through my department.
But there would be a reduction. Well, they're already, no, because you're saying if the ones that provide their own now continue to provide their own.
Right.
So you wouldn't be reducing. If they came to you, you would be adding.
I think the idea was if we're talking a 100% full central intake with full pretrial programs, then if everyone was there, that's where the number would be. If they don't, say if you have Warren that doesn't, they arraign all their people, we wouldn't be seeing them. after they
Right,
come
but
there.
that number is included in this 86, correct?
86 is separate from.
Okay, well, I won't go on and on about that, because I can talk to you independently
Yeah.
about it. It does seem to be that what's
Yeah,
being
I-
said is.
Yeah, I think it's the pretrial services. If the
Okay.
more departments that we have participating, the more staff Barbara's going to need to make sure that she's able.
And that is already included in here, though, right? Is it?
Right.
It's included in your
Yes.
proposal, so
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out what
Right.
that number is.
Right.
So it would be less the 86 if we didn't have everyone on board. That is, ours are included in
Right, I'm trying to figure out how many those are.
there. We wouldn't know until we knew who was.
But you said it's included in there, so there's a
So,
number
yeah,
in
so
here.
there's 13 now.
13.
13, so. if
Thank you.
We don't get the participation,
Okay,
we'll
thank
we'll
you.
reduce that number.
Okay, and this is not just with respect to the jail, it's with respect to how many people you currently oversee altogether in your department. Do you know that offhand or close?
562
Thank you.
plus almost 200 reserves.
Okay, and then the last thing is, can we go back to that, the thing that gives the staff numbers? It's the second to last page on the presentation.
Get up here, Jim.
I'll pull it up on here. It'll take mine a
Yes, I mean,
second to
like
get
this.
there.
I know.
Okay.
People are going to start talking.
Okay, so, yes, thank you. Okay, so would you repeat what NAWH means?
Net annual work hours.
Okay, so number 2 is number 1 with the inclusion of the overtime we're paying. So it's that, so number 2 is a more accurate picture of what we are paying. Would that be true?
Number 2 is, I don't know if it's a more accurate depiction of what you're paying. Number 2 is if you don't increase the number of posts or the hours that employees work, but just use the right net annual work hours, you will require this many people. There is a potential to offset almost all of your overtime.
Okay,
I think.
yeah. I just want to get a picture between these different columns, so, and I know there's a lot of people that want to speak, so you don't need to convince me of anything, I just want to understand it, okay? So number 3, the current staffing with updated,
Posts.
hours, with recommended changes. So the difference between 2 and 3 is, again,
With number 3, we looked at where areas that we were deficient in the right number of staff.
okay, and then number 4 is number 3 with the new jail capacity of 1250?
Number 4 is just the new jail capacity with the right net annual work hours.
And number 3 is what you say the right net annual work hours are right now?
Yes.
So number 4 is number 3 with the new jail?
No, number 4 is the new jail.
Yes. Okay. I think we're saying the same thing.
Fair enough.
Okay, I just want to understand it. So, and, so I was looking at that, okay, and then there's that 13. That's it, thank you, I understand, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Lucido.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick question. On page 3, the classifications were listed. You don't have to pull it up, but hit them. There you go. There you go. So it has all the different classifications listed, and it also has special needs. And then on page 6, it has the floors, the way that they're broken up, and I'm wondering with the special needs, there doesn't seem to be a placement. Is it inclusive with?
Special needs are, help me out, floors 4, 5, and 6, they're contained in there? They are? Yes. Oh, okay. Yeah, we didn't call out a floor just for special needs, they're distributed.
Okay.
Floor 3 is all of your medical, mental health, medical detox, and the most severely risk individuals.
Okay, and are the correction officers trained to work specifically with the special needs prisoners?
It is anticipated that those folks assigned to those areas would receive special or enhanced training.
Okay.
It would be
Thank you.
enhanced, yep.
Enhanced, thank you.
They're already getting
Yeah.
training for mental health and
Sure.
medical and those type of things to identify high-risk individuals.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Ha?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tony, you had indicated, and I thank you for it, the projected staffing and legacy costs moving forward. Ever since I've sat here, that's been asked on every project. So I commend you in proactively projecting what those could be, because there's no way to actually know. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Also, on the presentation, adding, and I believe Commissioner Carabelli touched on it, the contingency cost and the cost escalation on construction were in excess of $79 million total in the proposal, just for note for record. There's been a lot of discussion about direct security.
5 minutes?
Oh, we got another alarm.
Man.
Dealing with the inmates and accessibility, control, the mental health facility. What I haven't really heard a lot of is the direct impact on your COs and the officers in the jail. How does this project add enhanced security for the ones doing the security?
Again, having the direct supervision, having inmates take ownership reduces the ability for these inmates to act out. There's that interaction. Questions are answered, needs are met in a timely fashion. Again, historically and throughout the country, it has reduced the assaults on the staff.
And what I also thought I heard is this building is some 50 to 60 years old. In 2005, the former sheriff was here. You're not now here. And you said a lot of that's applicable to incidents that have taken place over the last couple years where you're being asked, what are you doing? Well, that is a response to what are you doing now? Actually, I think you're shortchanging yourself. It's what are you doing for the future? Because this building, I'm hoping, and nobody has said it, will last 50 or 60 years going into the future. And without it, you're going to be asked continuously when incidents happen, what are you doing? Do you agree with that?
I agree. A good leader is always looking down the road and looking at the future and seeing where they're going, where they're going to be, and how they can make it better. That's what this does.
Well, I commend you for biting this bullet because it's a big, hard pill to swallow. So thank you for
Totally
that.
understand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome. Okay, so I have a couple questions. They're going to be a little bit in terms of the architecture, I suppose, and the use of the facility. And then I'm going to have a pretty tough question. It's going to go to you, Jim, okay? And it's going to be what the voters are going to have on their mind, all right? We'll get to that last. But a couple, and Barb, you're going to be on this too. First, I'm going to start with you, Barb. Ladies first. Yeah. Ladies first, if we could. If we can get the slide of the intake section where we had the, yeah, that one right there. Yeah, where we have the, so, Barb, we use the courts. You know, a lot of us deal with the courts in the front of the court over here. It was designed a certain way, and then nobody liked it. It seemed like nobody went to the users, and it took another year before they set it up the right way. I do believe pretrial services is very important. The one theory here that the sheriff is purporting is that, and Jim purported this as well, and we'll get to that in a second, is that pretrial services are designed so that we can immediately address the needs of the people that we pick up off the streets. You looked at this architectural design?
I've been involved in the process for the entire time.
It's going to satisfy your needs as the head of community
100%.
corrections.
We are in booking. We have workstations in booking. The release office that was mentioned earlier that you can see just off the lobby, that contains some of our offices, so that we're not only seeing individuals that need to be enrolled in drug testing or electronic monitoring before they can be released, but we're also having individuals come from the community that need to have substance abuse assessments and things like that done, that have access to us, which was difficult to do because we're involved on both ends of that. No, we've been very involved. We got to see some really interesting things that are going on across the country in some of these facilities, and that's exactly what will happen with this.
Okay.
You know, if this is
So the
implemented.
structure as presented.
Yes.
And what possibly go in front of the voters.
Right.
You feel comfortable as head of community corrections that is going to satisfy the need for pretrial services.
100%, and that's
Okay.
been because we've had such input in it. So.
Okay. Now, there's a court that's going to be in the jail. I don't know who's going to answer this question, but are we going to use that court so that when we pick up somebody off the street, we can get them arraigned quickly? I mean, what's the plan with that, Sheriff?
You know, the original jail always had a court.
That's right.
And we put a court here. We've reached out to the different judges, and again, this is going to be available to them, depending on if the circuit court judge wanted to send somebody over and do circuit court arraignments one day, then everything can be done right in the facility. We don't have to, if they didn't want to do the video that we're discussing, we're giving the judges options. That ability is going to be there.
So the court will provide options, and again, the idea is to try to keep people out of jail to some extent, or catch what their problem is, and while they're out on bond, address it. Okay. These are going to probably be for you, Sheriff. Couple things. They talked about video visiting floor to floor. It looked like on the first floor. Now, does that mean that the way it is now, I guess I'm a professional, so whenever I go in there, I go and actually speak to my client in the jail.
You get the face-to-face.
I get a face-to-face. Is that still going to be the same for professionals?
Yes.
Okay. As far as the public now, it seems like it's a better system. Everybody's going to stay on the first floor and just video.
We're already doing that.
Okay, you're doing
Everybody
that now.
goes to one section on the west side, and that's where we're doing video visitation. We've been doing it for years.
And that'll continue the same way?
That'll continue.
Okay.
Yes.
The problem you have now is you're understaffed. Used to be a deal where we used to be able to give some of my clients work release. Okay. If you get this new existing structure, is that going to be a service that will be available again? And if you're fully staffed with this new millage?
If we're able to, put that forward, yes, we did discuss that. Obviously, we had a separate center for work release and weekenders.
Does this existing structure have the potential for that?
We would be able to. We kind of took that out of the equation, not knowing what it's going to be and trying to save as much money as we can. If we're doing weekenders like we're doing now, we could still put them inside the facility, and we could take a look at the work release aspect of it also.
Okay, so there are some services that you could re-implement, you believe, with the existing structure and possibly with the millage for the operations?
With the new structure, yes.
Okay, all right. All right, here's the tough one. Jim, you can come on up. This is a tough one now, okay? So I'm going to be a voter, and worse for you is I'm a lawyer who happens to be a voter. That doesn't mean anything because I'm a lawyer.
And a commissioner.
But I got to deal with, like, juries, right? And I got to deal with the voters. And we all know the voters are going to decide this, okay?
Sure, absolutely.
So let's put our hat on this one here and try to figure this out. It's going to be a tough question, and it's no disrespect because everything you've done here has been excellent. But you came to us in 2017 with the jail study. And in that jail study, the most important element that you said was pretrial services, everything we just got done talking to Barb about. And we're going to get that, because that's really essential. You agree with me in your report, there was nothing, absolutely nothing about direct supervision. Would you agree with me?
We didn't mention it as a recommendation. We included it as a recommendation in the intake and assessment process.
Okay. You would also agree with me that in your report in 2017, and again, let's be a voter here. They got to make a tough decision too. And if they look at our record, if they look at our minutes, if they look at your report, they're going to see, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you thought perhaps renovations on the existing jail facility would be needed as well. And the more we have in pretrial services, obviously it would be the less we would need in renovations. Now, how do we reconcile that with what we're looking for today? How is a voter going to say, if I look back and see that, and now they're coming to us 2 years later and saying we need a whole new facility, how do we reconcile that?
We reconciled it by saying that we studied 5 options. One of them was to do significant renovations at the current building, and we found that it was more costly. Correct?
It was close to the same.
It was close to the same price as a new construction.
And in 2017, ceiling tiles weren't falling off the building.
Okay.
So we did evaluate it.
Okay. We don't have any supplemental report from you. Would you be willing to put a supplemental report to your 2017 report?
Sure. When you say a supplementary report, you mean update some of the information that was in
Yes.
there?
I think it would be important to do that. Again, I'm only looking at if we had to present it to a jury or if we had to present it to the voters, because that's what we're going to have to do. And people are going to ask that question, and I think it's probably important that we really emphasize, and I get where the sheriff's going, you can have me renovate the existing structure, sure, and I can get pretrial services and I can try to get direct supervision, but it's going to cost you more money instead of us building a whole new jail. And I think that has to really be emphasized to some extent in some report someplace for the record. And ultimately, I think the voters need to decide that.
Let me ask this back. Is what you're looking for is something that captures the work that's now been done since we issued that report?
I think that would be appropriate.
Okay.
I think that would be very appropriate.
I would anticipate it wouldn't be a lengthy document. It is more of an addendum or an executive
Correct.
summary or something like that that says, since this date, these things have occurred, here's been the methodology and the recommendations.
Correct, and I think you need to put the word direct supervision in there.
Absolutely.
I do, because I don't think that's in the original report. I really don't. Okay. All right, that was my tough question. I turn it over to Joe Romano.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Sheriff.
Hey, Joe.
Well, we really put you on the hot seat, didn't we?
That's-
You know what, I have to, and
That's what I'm here
and I
for.
think Commissioner Haas said, it, you just don't lose your cool, and that's good. I guess with what you deal with, you can't.
Should have been running with me this morning.
You know, there was a couple of years ago, there was a movie out, and I think it was called The Field of Dreams, and the guy says, if you build it, they will come. So you had mentioned earlier, you said, you know, you thought about perhaps maybe a smaller facility. Who would want to take the chance that you did build a smaller facility, and lo and behold, years to come, all of a sudden we needed a bigger one, and people would look at you and say, well, why didn't you build a big one in the first place? That's just a statement. But my questions are, in the last 6 months, could you come up with some type of numbers that say the average daily population? Because you said the population was down, but in the last 6 months, has it been continuously going down? I know you just mentioned it's going up a little bit now.
With last 6 months, we started to see the decline in December of 2018.
Okay.
So historically, December is what we would say the slower month. You have the holidays, judges are on vacation. There may be some deferments in sentencing until after the holidays. So we do see our population drops in the month of December. And then usually January, February, we start to creep back up. This year, we were all-time low. Again, I think twice in this past 6 months, we hit the high 800 marks. But now we are back up to 959. That was today's average daily population. And again, there's not just one thing that my staff, anybody could say, you know, this is the reason why your population is going down.
So if I asked you who the majority of your offenders are, could you come up with is it, apparently it's in homicide, is it drug, is it
Well, you got
domestic abuse? What do we
well,
have there,
you know,
Sheriff?
your domestic abuse for the most part are going to spend overnight, probably get arraigned, and depending on the situation, will get released. You have those individuals that have the drug issues, the probation violations, are going in front of the judge for their third time of violating probation, and the only way to get them sober is to throw them in jail. The majority of the population that we have there pre-trial are there for violent crimes. Like I said, there's nobody in jail that I could, you know, and I'm sure somebody will do the research that had, you know, a marijuana cigarette and is serving time in jail. You know.
With the addition of the medical facility, which will be outsourced, am I correct?
Yes.
And it's just, I'm just thinking here, if I was in charge of that facility, and I had any doubt in my mind at all that this was a problem that should be going directly to the hospital to limit my liability, I would do such. I don't understand why we're outsourcing when in fact we have people now on staff that would do it. If I was in charge of that and I had the slightest chance that this guy might be a problem, I'm going to send him out, and here he goes to a private, or goes to the hospital, as you say it, whereas now we look at it and say, listen, this guy's done this many times before, we're not going to send him out, this is just going to be cost savings for the county. So,
Right. So with our contracted medical provider, you know, that in that, in light of everything that's been going on, you know, whether right, wrong, or, you know, with the different lawsuits, and I won't talk about those, the fact is that the healthcare provider, they're erring on the side of caution. You know, if they'll assess them in-house, and if they believe they need to go to the hospital, then we're pulling cars off the road and transporting prisoners to the hospital. And again, I think the last time I was here, you know, we had 9 inmates in the hospital. That's 9 deputy sheriffs, 24 hours a day guarding prisoners. Try to consolidate them, you can't. You have different ailments, different floors. You have male prisoners, female prisoners. It's just a nightmare. But it's what we have to do.
You know, somebody had mentioned about the rate of recidivism. And I had when I worked at a probation department here in Sterling Heights, I had a probation officer did his doctorate, and he came up with 72% of prisoners come back.
When did he do that?
72%. That was back probably 10 years ago.
73. So things haven't
He was
changed.
pretty close, right?
Yep.
So is it that the judges are not stepping out? I mean, if they're not, and I'm asking because I'm a neophyte. If the judges are not stepping up, is it, if they're not violent, what are they doing in jail? I don't understand this, but maybe you can explain. I mean, if they have a drug problem, I understand that, but if there's no crime committed other than the fact that these people like to stick needles in their arms or swallow pills, what are they doing in jail?
Well, you have to take a look at it, and again, I can't speak for the bench, but if you put you know, if you're the judge
And this individual it's the third time that they're either being arrested, because they're putting a needle in their arm or they're snorting heroin or they're, violating their probation. How many times are you just going to, slap them on the wrist and say, go back out into the community until they die or till they go on out, commit a crime or get behind a wheel and kill somebody? The judges they have no other options but to put them incarcerate them.
Okay, let me get off of that. Let me get back onto
going.
this. Okay, local jurisdictions, and I think Commissioner Kleinfeld hit on this. Why don't they all want to use the jail facilities? I don't get this. Is it the cost factor? It's cheaper for them to house their own?
To me, I think a lot of it would be local control. We did this through the analysis. Again, I stepped out of it. The team went and they talked to all the police agencies, that wanted to be part of it, or that, just like we did with dispatch, every department came together, and in the end, who was left shaken, we talked about it. I've heard, and I won't identify departments, some asked, how am I going to interview my prisoners?
They can't do it in the jail?
That was the question that was asked. I had the answer, but again, I think a lot of it's local control. They just want to keep their, the prisoners down there. And again, that's...
Have you reached out to any of these municipalities that don't want to participate? I mean, I'm sure you have, but...
Yeah, we have. I think, the last time I was here, somebody asked me that. And again, we reached out again. The ones that I did have a commitment still from were Chesterfield and Roseville. Others are contemplating, but obviously they want to see how it's going to go. You pull the trigger and you get one or two agencies coming and things are working out and it's not that bad, then usually the rest of them would follow. But again, I can't force people and I won't force people, but the option's there. Who would want to, again, there's smaller departments that are watching prisoners with their dispatchers.
So I guess, along with the other commissioners, my concern is, I have talked to my constituents, not a great amount. If I said a dozen, I'm probably pretty close, and have brought up this particular situation. And I'm not getting a whole bunch of applause for it, I guess is a good word for it. So I know that you're going to have to do a big PR on this, no question about it. But do we have a plan B? I mean, is there a plan B? And if there is a plan B, what is it going to cost us? Do I even want to bring that up, or do I just want to go ahead with this, putting it on the ballot? Because
you know what? If again, just
I don't want. I think you need the facility. First of all,
thank you.
You need the facility. Yeah. But do we want to go down in flames by putting it right on the ballot immediately without, I don't know, some?
Well,
I don't know.
And again, I understand. Again, we're all elected officials, right? We all speak. For our constituents. And I said earlier, your constituents are my constituents. 2 times a year, we do a senior academy, police academy, where we bring in senior citizens from Macomb County, and we teach them and tell them about the sheriff's office. So the last academy, I think it was our Lieutenant Lori Mish presented the jail function, the jail operation, what we did. She talked about the jail. I showed up on the last day, asked questions. And I had my constituents and those individuals from all your communities ask the question, what do you think? I had a couple ladies stand up and said, Sheriff, we'll be your biggest champion in this cause. We believe this is the right thing to do. So, again, I go out in the communities too. Huh? People are going to see me now after this. What are you, crazy? I can take it. But then there's going to be other people. Do we need it? I'm going to tell you what we have and what we need. The option and the choice is theirs. If they don't want it, that's okay. We're still going to do what we can do. But here is a solution. Let's at least give it a shot.
Welcome. Okay, now, Commissioner Carabelli, you're on the second round, but I see Commissioner Sauger, who again is our oldest member and probably one of the oldest living citizens in Macomb County. Will you yield to him? Go ahead, Commissioner Sauger.
Sheriff, I just want to put to rest with some of the commissioners' comments how you take care of a whole group of prisoners. Taking you as the security guard on a floor, and all of us up here are prisoners. You can't watch every one of them through their cell because the window's so big, and you can't put a big glass window. So you have to have a person walking around and checking them. And a person can take, I'm not saying time, but I remember working in the jail, and it takes that much time for a person to commit suicide by twisting around their neck on the doorknob. So if anybody's thinking about one security guard could take care of this whole floor, it's impossible, because you got to have help and you got to check each one periodically to cover your back and also log it on that this is when that happened. And the other part I'm really happy to hear about is I know of many of security guys, deputies going to the
Corrections
hospitals.
deputies.
At times you have 7, 8, 9 going to different hospitals, different floors, and every one, to the point, has to have 24-hour, round-the-clock guard service. That's what's ruining the heck out of your budget, one of the things, and I'm glad to see there's going to be a way to consolidate them and with the new jail to get most of them right inside instead of shipping them out. I hope I'm around to see it. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Carabelli on the second round.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is our finance director still up here?
Sure.
If I can have him come up? Steve, real quick, I'm not going to put you on the spot, but it was said in one of the slides that we, about $3.5 million a year above and beyond normal maintenance. I respectfully disagree with that number. I think it's closer to $5 million a year. We just sat down, I think last year, at the end of 18, and we counted the new bed had to be replaced, the speakers with lights, how many millions of dollars that we went through a whole process that it was, I thought, closer to $6-7 million. When you get a chance, can you please go back through and look at those numbers? And would I be wrong to say it's on an average above and beyond normal maintenance? Over $4 million, $4 million?
3 to 4. I would say closer to 4.
Because it makes a difference, because when, I look at the last 10 years and I say 10 years of $4 million of supplementing a Band-Aid on something, that's $40 million. Now we're getting into meat and potatoes, and if we go out further, how many more things are coming? I know of capital projects, at least of $2 million of boilers that got to be replaced coming up in the next few years. And this is just stuff I'm thinking of. So the actual cost of trying to keep it going is actually draining out of the general fund of stuff that we could be doing something else with. I just wanted to point that out.
And I'll suggest or say to you that 2018 there was a spike in 2018. That jail lighting project is about $4.9 million. I think we spent $500,000 on the jail bed replacement. There was kettle replacements this year for $100,000, I think. So 18 going into 19, there definitely was a spike. It wasn't necessarily experienced in the previous few years. So when you average it over 10 years, you're at somewhere between 3 and 4 probably. But we did have a spike, and the lighting project should last at least a number of years, even through the construction of this facility. So,
and thank you. The rest of the board members, every time we went to spend this money, I kept saying over and over, we're putting good money after bad into this building. And I know we don't want to go out to the taxpayers and ask for money. I know we don't want to spend any money. But the reality is, when you look at in 10 years, if you spent $40 to $50 million of keeping something going, fiscal responsibility has to come in and say, hang on a minute, what does the bigger picture look like? So, Sheriff, with that said, I'm not a fan of the architecture of some of the stuff here, and I can't support fancy-dancy, okay? Can't do it. You need something? I'm your number one cheerleader. I know you need something. I was here when we put a $90 million package together for the infrastructure underneath the jail that had to be replaced, and the federal government said, no, well, it still has to be replaced. Something has to be done, and that hasn't even come to surface yet. As I look at this, something that wasn't mentioned, so if my numbers are off, somebody prove me wrong, because this is what's sticking in my head of just pulling things out without really going through numbers. I also look at the millions of dollars that is being spent through our insurance carrier and out of the general fund, or whichever fund that they won't tell me, for lawsuits, but millions of dollars in pending lawsuits are still there. So those are added costs of keeping the same facility over and over. Now, long term, I know we need to have a new jail. No one wants a new jail. We look what other counties did, and they didn't set a good track record for us to come and do this. Not that Macomb County would do something like that, but it doesn't shed a good light on a jail, period, of what has happened in the past. But the reality is you've assembled a team, came back to us saying this is what you're needing. And I appreciate your effort and what you've done. Again, skinny mini on all the inside fancy dancy stuff, I'm not part of that. I won't support it. Otherwise, I do support whatever you have going as far as taking care of our responsibility. By law, we have to have a functioning jail. And to what point that it becomes an emergency, we can't house anybody anymore. And those are the concerns the longer we wait. This has been kicked down the road. There was, how much was the how much was it, did we pay the, for the study and to date? 1.7. I wasn't here, but there was another spend of over that. I think it was over $2 million of doing the exact same thing, and what happened, he got kicked down the road. No one wanted to make that decision. But yet, my number's right, $50 million of Band-Aids keeps going on. Well, a few more decades of $50 million the jail's paid for. So the reality is that if we're gonna be fiscally responsible, is to take a bigger picture of long-term of how does this impact us, of putting Band-Aids on. So with that said, for the record, I do support you with the new jail. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Commissioner Brown?
This question is to Steve, our finance director. What's the projected yearly bond payment if going
The average
forward
is about 28 million, depending on interest rates and final project costs, but based on a $375 million bond issue over 20 years at 4% interest.
$28
is
million
About $28
a year
million.
out of our general fund.
Well, it'd be,
Well,
28 million, so certainly can't come out of the current tax millage in the general fund. That's why we need a dedicated millage
Well,
to fund this.
yeah, that's right, $28 million.
Average.
Yeah. Thank you.
Commissioner Kleinfeld on the second round.
Very briefly, first of all, I guess that should be our new motto. Skinny mini on the fancy dancy. I'm gonna write that one down and frame it. I like that. It is a shame that all of the public can't see what we've seen in the facility, because I don't know, I've toured the facility, and not only were some of the living conditions for the inmates extremely unacceptable, in my opinion, especially in the mental health areas, the working conditions for the employees are absolutely horrible in my, I've toured it twice. I got claustrophobia. I overheated. There are some floors where you couldn't pay me enough to work there. And I don't know if you can take pictures and capture it, but I wish there was some way for us to be able to show the public what you see on a daily basis. I just wanted to put that out there. That's why I said I do know that there needs to be a solution, and that's all I have to, thank you.
And I thank you for those that have come through and taken a tour to see what it is all about inside there.
And last but not least, hopefully, Commissioner Jolette on the second round.
Well, Commissioner Romano had asked if there was a Plan B. And your response was, you want to get this to the voters, you want to get this approved, and if they don't approve it, you'll have to go back to making do, essentially. Essentially, I guess.
Well, I would come back and ask this body, our government, what are our options? Where can we go? Because we can't do nothing.
Right, and I agree with you that we can't do nothing. I agree with you that we need a new facility, and I appreciate the concerns. You know, I would think, though, that we need to be realistic about the public's perception of what they believe the needs are for tax dollars. You know, I hear a ton of people contact me about roads. We talked about people complain about, dumping sewage into the lake and so forth. And the fact of the matter is people, everyday people don't interact with the jail very often. They interact with the roads, you know, on a daily basis and so forth. It would seem to me that not you, you've done the responsible thing. You've identified what you believe your needs are. As far as a board of commissioners and a county in general, that we should look at plans Bs, because I, for one, am not very certain that voters are going to say, yes, you know, outdoor recreation for prisoners is a higher priority than the roads, or, you know, whatever the needs might be. A plan B could very well be identifying our existing debts that are set to expire as bond issues are retired and dedicating those funds into a specific jail fund until a point that we can have enough retired debts that we can then build a jail. And in speaking with Steve, that would be a few years away. It might be 6 years away, 5.5, 6 years away before we would have enough retired bond debt that we could then build a jail without raising anybody's taxes. Now, I realize that 5.5 years is a very long time for the people who are working in the jail, for the people who are experiencing the conditions in the jail, you know, for the people who administer the jail. However, it may be our only plan B. And I would hope that we as a board, and not you, you're not the finance guy, you've identified the needs, that we as a board and the county would begin looking at that plan as the more realistic option as far as what the public is likely to support, given what the public perceives, what I hear the public perceiving as their priorities. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we've got a motion to receive and file on this. Are there any other questions? Okay, let's vote on this. Thank you, Sheriff.
Okay.
Thanks to everybody in the team and all the time you took to answer the questions.
Yeah, we're not going anywhere.
No,
but
I know.
Just for
When I'm
our
I know you're not.
edification, what happens next, folks? 'Cause my team would know.
You know, I think your architects and your presenters, I would say, folks, commissioners, I think they can leave, right? The next questions are all going to be delved into finance,
No, I'm
pretty
saying
much.
after this meeting, Commissioner.
Oh, after this
Yeah,
meeting?
when are we
Get to
gonna-
that in a second. Hold on. This just
okay.
passed
All right.
13-0. Yeah, I got you. We'll let you know here in a second. All right, the next item, which is the resolution, this is item 6C, to authorize the millage for this. Now, let me say this, before we begin discussions on this, I think the most prudent thing to do is this. I think I'm going to entertain a motion to move this over, and everybody get your calendars out. We're going to move this over to the next Records and Public Safety meeting. We're going to discuss it today, but we're going to move it over to the Records and Public Safety meeting on July 18th. I'll give you time to write that down, Sheriff. Well, I think the usual time, 3 o'clock. And then you can safely assume that after we discuss it again on the 18th, we're going to approve something at full board on July 25th. So write that down. And the reason for that is so that this board can do its due diligence. We want to give ourselves a little bit of time to take all this information, to continue to talk to our constituents, and to deliberate, because that's what this board does. And then we'll come back here on the 18th and have some further questions and probably further deliberation. And then hopefully we're going to get it so that we can get it to you on the 25th. I want to thank Vicki back there. We worked hard to get this on the agenda for today so that this commission would have enough time in order to deliberate. Okay, so with that, I'm looking for a motion to take this resolution and move it to the Records and Public Committee on July 18th. Looking for a motion. Commissioner Drollet, supported by Commissioner Carabelli. We can vote on it now, and then we can have discussion if you folks want. Want to vote on it now? Discussion first? Very well. Okay. Who wants to come up and talk about the millage, the language? Steve, come on up.
Good afternoon again, Commissioners. So, again, what you have in front of you is a motion to approve ballot language and the placement of that ballot language on the November general election to finance the project that we're talking about. Again, as we spoke earlier today, funding this project would require a millage of 0.98 mils, not to exceed 0.98 mils, I should clarify that. Over a 20-year period, the idea would be to fund the project with a 20-year bond issue as well as a portion of this millage would support the additional staff that have been discussed at length today. The ballot language must be approved by the governing board by August 13th, which is 12 Tuesdays before the election. So that's why we're here today, trying to get it before you for consideration and debate. What I do need to point out is a matter of housekeeping. I believe on page, well, and throughout the entire resolution, there's a reference to 21 years. All of those references need to be 20 years. And then the inclusive period is 2020 through 39. So again, we had debt service schedules prepared by the PFM Group, which is the financial advisory firm that we utilized for our last two bond issues. Again, it's a 20-year issue at 4%. To answer questions earlier, we factored in all of our legacy costs, all of our personnel costs using 2% wage inflation, 4% healthcare inflation, our standard pension costs and retiree healthcare costs, which I would expect would actually go down over that 20-year period since we closed those plans 4 years ago. So those costs, as new people come on board and tenured people retire, those costs should actually be reduced. It was mentioned earlier, we still have to go through design and development, so we don't know the final cost yet. The 375 is an estimate at this point, so we likely won't issue these bonds until late 20, early 21, and we'll know more then what interest rates are and all those sorts of things. What we have not factored into the millage, this is a worst-case scenario, we haven't factored in any interest earnings on the bond proceeds during the construction phase. So if you factor those in, which we won't really know what those estimates are going to be until we get to the point of issuing bonds, because we don't know what the market conditions are going to be, we could likely end up issuing a lower amount of bonds. Didn't factor that in because I don't know what to do a year and a half out in terms of the market. So it ends up at 0.78 mils to fund the construction, the debt service, if you will, to about 0.2 mils at the high end to fund the additional personnel. So you get to 0.98. And again, if we get to the point of issuing a lower amount of bonds, we will adjust that millage to cover whatever the debt service is.
Okay. You ready, Steve? Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you. This millage is a combination of an operational millage and a construction millage, and I thought that those had to be separated out.
We're combining them as one.
Can we do that? You're sure we can do that? I thought you couldn't do a construction millage
We're doing one millage to fund both, so we can use proceeds to
as
go
long
back
as
and
they're
forth.
both listed in there.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Carabellian, you discussed there was a spike last year. I just wanted to say that spike is likely going to happen more often if we continue with the existing jail. I don't think that's going to be an unusual thing. I think it's going to become the norm as the jail continues to deteriorate. I just wanted to point that out. And the last thing I'll say is, we've all heard things from residents, and we're not necessarily hearing positive things. There hasn't been the educational push yet. But rather than us determining what the voters want to do, why don't we let the voters determine what the voters want to do? We're not being asked to raise anybody's taxes. We're being asked to let the voters make that decision. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Steve. Should I address questions about the ballot language to you, or to
Well, I think
John?
Myself and John.
Okay. I believe the language is leading. Okay, I think everybody knows I got
Yeah,
that
I'll
belief.
leave those questions to
Okay, I'll wait for
counsel.
John to come on up. And thanks, John. I got basically three questions on this. For example, in the summary at the top of the language, it says to construct, equip, furnish, and fully staff a new jail in the county for the benefit of residents, businesses, and communities in the county. Why didn't we include inmates in the jail? Wouldn't it benefit them? Wouldn't it benefit more than businesses?
Of course, it would benefit them.
So why do we put businesses in?
Because it benefits them, it makes the community safer.
And why don't we put inmates in? Because it benefits them with the medical care, with the mental health care. Why would we?
They're residents. They're residents of our jail, at least.
Well, so our businesses are most of them are residents. What about communities of the county are also residents, are they not?
It's for the safety of the communities.
It's for the safety of the community and the residents, and they're all the same people, but we don't want to include the word inmates.
The inmates would be residents of the county for the
And
time that
wouldn't
they're in our
communities
jail.
of the county also be residents? But we restate that
No,
twice.
communities are municipal organizations.
And so inmates are residents, but businesses and communities in the counties are not residents.
The inmates are guest residents of the county of Macomb for the time
All right,
that
let me
they're
ask you
in
another
our jail.
question. The word efficient appears, yet we're raising the amount of money necessary to run the jail.
Yes.
And adding more people. So this is, why don't we put the word costlier?
It makes the jail more efficient.
But it's also
For the ex-
costlier, makes it
for
more,
the-
it's
for the
costlier too.
expanded services. Everything is costlier. A loaf of bread will be more costly next year. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing.
John, any new building is going to be more modern too.
Yes.
So we've chosen very deliberately to use words like efficient, even though we know a more modern building is going to be more efficient, but leave out the word costlier, even though this is going to be more costly. Similarly, we include language like provision of adequate medical services, something the sheriff says we already do, which then therefore has nothing to do with this proposal. Something new in the proposal, that's something we already provide, but we're listing it as a feature of this proposal, but something that we don't currently provide, which is outdoor recreation opportunities. Why is that not in here?
Because we don't provide those.
But we would under this new proposal.
Not outdoor.
Oh, yes, we would, according to the plan we just saw.
There are gymnasium-type facilities on every one of those floors, but it's not outside.
Okay, then maybe I misinterpreted. I thought the gentleman said there was daylight and outdoor recreational opportunities. Is that inaccurate?
There's fresh air that comes in there. It's inside, but there's a door that will.
Okay, so there are additional recreation opportunities. But we didn't list that, but we listed something we already provide, adequate medical services.
And?
Why would we tell the voters?
To provide for better medical services.
It doesn't say that. It says adequate medical services, sir.
The plaintiff's bar will be listening to every word I say about medical services, so I have to be very, very careful. Those of you who have taken the tour of the jail facility, you know what the mental health unit looks like, you know what the medical unit looks like. You know that there are very limited numbers of cells in both, and when they fill up, then the treatment is provided in the general pop areas, whatever cell they can find. The expanded medical services available in the new proposed facility, this is where I have to be very careful, will significantly reduce litigation liabilities and prisoner safety issues for decades to come.
The language says provide adequate medical services, despite the fact that that's a current feature of our existing, what we provide. It doesn't state other new features that are being added for the first time. I'm glad, Mr. Chair, that we are not, voting today on the language, and I would hope that we can work together to make sure that the language, and if language is up on the ballot, that if that happens, that the language, we're all comfortable, is not trying to lead voters one way or the other.
This is not written in stone. If you want to change it, change it.
I've got some ideas.
I have no doubt.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No, and I'm next on the list. And going along with what Leon says, I mean, you're up here, John, now. I mean, the language has to be, if I understand it correctly, it cannot be any form of propaganda. And in fact, if it's interpreted that way, it could be challenged.
It could be challenged. This
Okay.
language actually comes, not verbatim, but very closely from a similar millage proposition, I believe, from Lenawee County,
Shiawassee County. Okay.
From just a few years ago.
All right. You would agree this issue is a hot potato, right? I mean, it's a big issue, and we're going to be putting it in front of the
tax
voters.
issue.
And there's going to be people out there who probably don't want this thing to pass and may take measures to do so. Let me ask you this. What's wrong? Is there anything, we're going to look at this language. I do tend to agree with him that we probably should find a little bit happier medium, and I've seen Leon's proposal, and it's the other way. Okay. Let me ask you, is there anything wrong with using the terms direct supervision or pretrial services in this? I mean, don't assume the public doesn't know what that is. I mean, public is an educated group of people. I know most people dismiss voters. When they see words like pretrial services and direct supervision, I think they're going to take a look at that before they vote and see a little bit about what that means. Can we use that in the ballot proposal
You
language?
can use those words.
Okay. And if we use those...
I actually wrote this and tried to keep it kind of generic, the big categories in a generic sense.
Right. I mean, the word pretrial services would encompass a lot of the things that you're talking about there that Leon looks at as propaganda. And, of course, direct supervision would also encompass some of the terms that Leon might think is propaganda, right? I mean, we could do that theoretically.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I just want to know because, again, it's a very difficult issue for everybody here. And what we don't want to do is open the door to any kind of legal challenges, you know what I mean? And so if you can send me the thing from Shiawassee County,
sure,
that would be great. If there's any other, and that was a question I had, I guess, even for the sheriff or any of the other folks here that have been involved in, how many other counties have put something on the ballot? Do we know?
Muskegon County did about 5 or 6 years ago. I know they opened their new facility about 3 years ago.
Okay.
Granted, much smaller county, smaller tax base, much smaller facility.
Correct.
And they did a very intense public relations campaign to sell it to the voters before the vote. And it passed overwhelmingly.
Okay.
And the Muskegon County Jail prior to that time dated from the 1960s.
Okay. All right. So there was public relations involved in that. All right. Very well. And then does anybody know, Jim, maybe if you know, any similarly situated counties with the same size population that we know of that put something on the ballot like this, a millage that you're aware of, Jim?
In the state of Michigan or outside?
Anywhere. We'll take anything right now.
Yeah, I can do a little bit of research and find some counties.
If you could get that for us, and if possibly we could have the ballot language for that as well, that would be great, Jim. Thank you. You can appreciate that. Okay. Thank you, John.
Welcome. Nothing else.
Commissioner Majek.
Thank you, Chair. John, can I still have you up here if that's all right? Just a question.
This close to a clean
Sure.
getaway.
No, just a suggestion that I would like to see if the ballot proposal would be approved as far as language. I would, in terms of fairness to the voter, right after the last sentence, if approved, it would levy about $28.6 million in the first year. I have no problem with that. But after that, another sentence indicating somewhere along the effects, if approved, it would raise $375 for the jail construction and another, according to my calculations here, where are we at here? $184 million in debt service for a total cost of, I believe, $559. I know it's added more language and stuff, but some ballot proposals have included that in the past. I think the community college had, a certain millage increase, and they indicated how much that would raise over that lifetime. So maybe that's something the board and corporate council can take a look at. Your thoughts on that?
Just my gut feeling is I don't like the idea.
Why is that?
I just got feeling right now. I'd have to look into that.
Okay, if you could, that would be
See if it's
great.
appropriate to put, because this is a limited issue, it's just the millage issue.
Right.
How much it raises and, debt service that we're going to be paying is not necessarily germane to the millage issue, the tax raise issue for the residents.
Right.
I'd have to look at that.
Okay, because I'm just looking at it at the fairness side. When the voter goes and votes, they know how much, this is going to cost. Okay, they could see a cost for 1 year, and they can get their calculator out and figure that. But I think it's important to look at the total cost. So I've been up here on the Board of Commissioners since '95. I've seen a lot of ballot proposals come. I mean, I can go through. This is just for the board here. We had the smart millage start in 1995. It went from 0.33 mils to 0.6 to 1 mil, which is where it's at roughly today. Those elections were held in the August primary. We had the veterans millage, I believe that was 2008 or 2009, around there. that also went on the August primary. We had the zoo, millage, and the DIA, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they were on the same year, 2010 or 2012, around that time frame as well. So all on the primary elections, you know, people can vote through, state law allows elections to be held February, May, August, and November, as I understand it. And it just seems all too convenient that there's so many tax proposals that happen during low turnout. For example, in this case, if we put it on for November 2019, based on past history of elections, you're looking at 12 communities, 15 communities that voted in 2017, about 18.5% turnout, which is 116,000 voters, okay? If we put this on the ballot for November 2020, which is where you have high turnout, it's a presidential year, you're looking at about 66 to maybe close to 70% voter turnout. That equates to 303,000 more voters voting on this from one year to the next. I know I'm probably speaking in the minority on this, but I think that's pretty significant and important that we should make this convenient for the public, for the most people that can vote on this. This is a large issue. This is, you know, Sheriff Wickersham said that earlier. This is the largest issue we've dealt with or seen in 20 years. I thought that the county administration building here, which we built 20 years ago, was I think 16 to 20 million. That was the biggest project back then when I was first elected, but this dwarfs that. This is a total cost of $570 million. So in respect for the voters and for democracy and representation, you know, I would much more rather see this be placed on the November 2020 election. And then also, as all of us have received the memorandum here from Clerk Fred Miller, that the approximate cost would be about $400,000 to the communities to hold it this November 2019 versus 2020. So thanks for your time, John, and thank you, Chair.
Okay, Commissioner Haw.
Thank you, Chair. Just procedurally, you had indicated we weren't going to be taking any action on this tonight, that we would do it to the next meeting. Are you looking for each individual commissioner who's looking to comment on the ballot language to submit recommendations to you? And how procedurally do you want to do this?
Well, I think we've got the proposal that we have here that was presented to us, drafted by John. And I think what we should do is take a look at it, and each of us get back to me in the next week. I mean, and let me know what your thoughts are on the language. I've seen a draft proposal from Commissioner Drollet. I think he was being illustrative in showing where he could use some equal propaganda in a way. And so the point I want to make is, and I conferred here with Pete, is we don't want to make it anything where somebody would bring a legal challenge, right? I'm a lawyer and I'm sick of lawsuits lately these days, right? Okay, so we want to make sure it's fair, that there's nothing there. And I think we should listen to what everybody on this commission says. We all represent different groups. We may come from different cities and townships, but we all have different people that listen to us. Leon has a certain perspective, all right? And, MyJack has a certain perspective. And I think the idea here is, as commissioners, we get a unified idea, and we work together with the administration and with the sheriff on what a fair ballot proposal would be. So that way nobody feels somebody's got an edge over somebody else, and that nobody then decides to go to court on it.
And then isn't there a process where that goes to the election commission and they look at the language as well?
Yeah, they do. And that consists of, I think, a probate judge.
Probate judge, clerk. So
And
you're actually looking at 3 more steps.
Yes.
To get it there, okay.
I think we should collaboratively work together and agree on something, taking everybody's positions or interests into account, going back to the sheriff, going back to legal, make sure we have something that's there. And I think we're going to get some samples, if I understood correctly, right, from some of the other counties that had similar ballot proposals?
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Commissioner Duje.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've discussed this ad infinitum. Whether anybody thinks we need a new jail or not is I think past discussion, I think we can all agree that we do need a new jail. I have no problems with language as stated, because there are other steps and other people that are going to look at it. I think Sheriff Wickersham has a heck of a sales job on his hands, but I don't think it's going to be as bad as some people have made it out to be. Talked to some of the people that have been either in jail or some of the victims of people that are going to jail. My point is this: we've all seen the movies of tiles falling off the ceiling and off the walls, and we're lucky somebody didn't get killed. So if we want to sit here and argue about the language of this, that's fine and dandy. I don't support postponing this, and I'm not going to wait until somebody gets killed in the jail because of something falling off a wall. And so I'm going to vote against postponing this. Let's go forward with it and be done with it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Does anybody else have any questions? I have a question on the second round. I don't know, Steve, you might be the one to answer this. Come on up, Steve, and maybe answer this. So I have to look after some of my constituents, specifically in Harrison Township. And along the lines of what Commissioner Myjack was asking, Harrison Township has absolutely nothing to vote on this year in 2019. From what I understand from Clerk Miller's memo, Harrison Township would have to, pay some costs to put this on their, on the ballot. Is it the custom of the county to reimburse those townships if we do something like this? Do you know?
I don't know. I believe Clerk Miller's memo spelled out 2 or 3 different scenarios that have happened in the past where something like this is a countywide issue has been placed on a ballot in an off year where, communities didn't have. I think we did reimburse, I believe.
We did, Commissioner Carabelli, you're saying?
Yeah, I believe we did reimburse. I think Clerk Miller spelled that out in his memo.
Okay, I saw that. I saw that he said that, but now let me ask you, maybe Commissioner Carabelli, Vice Chair, you could answer this question. Do we have to have a resolution to that effect to guarantee that our townships that don't have anything on a ballot are going to be reimbursed by the county? What guarantees do we give them? Or it's just a... Is it a law by state? Okay. Okay. Fair enough. That's all I need to know. Thank you. I appreciate it. Commissioner Drollet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The motion before us right now is postponement till July's meeting. Is that correct?
That's correct. We're gonna try to take we're gonna do this at Records and Public Safety on the 18th.
Okay.
And then on the 25th, we are gonna vote on this at the full board.
Okay.
And again, the purpose for that is to give us time to do some deliberations and due diligence. I can appreciate what Commissioner Dujay says, but we all want to do a little due
It won't make
diligence.
the election come faster if we vote on it tomorrow or a month from tomorrow.
That's correct.
The election's still in November.
That's right. And I'm going to commend Vicki and the sheriff and everybody for getting this on our agenda now so that we would have some time to do some deliberations and due diligence. Go ahead.
So, Mr. Chair, after we vote on this motion, I have a motion I would like to make after this motion is disposed of.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. So we have a motion on the table right now. Well, it does have to be an agenda item. That's correct. Yeah. Well, we'd have to make a motion to suspend the agenda in order to allow your motion.
I may move that we amend the motion before us.
Okay, so you can make a motion to amend that's in front of us.
I would like to do that with I'm not sure who the second was in my motion originally.
Is there a second to amend this motion? I guess we don't know what your yeah. The first motion, Mike, who made the first motion?
The current motion is to postpone, right?
Correct, and the
Yeah.
motion was made by Commissioner Drollet and supported by Commissioner Carabelli.
Okay.
So, what I'd like to do is amend my motion to postpone and see if Commissioner Keller agrees to include an additional component.
Okay.
And that component would be, and don't have my microphone on. My commission, it would to postpone and to amend the motion to state that whereas the Macomb County Clerk estimates placing a countywide proposal on the November 2019 election ballot will cost approximately $400,000. And whereas the Board of Commissioners wishes to assess public opinion of a proposal that would authorize a levy of up to an additional .98 mils for the purpose of constructing and operating a new Macomb County jail before committing the approximate $400,000 expenditure required to place such a proposal on November 2019 ballot. Therefore, the Board of Commissioners authorizes the expenditure of up to $20,000 from the Board of Commissioners budget for the purpose of conducting a poll of registered Macomb County electors likely to participate in the November 2019 election. The poll shall be conducted by a reputable, professional, independent, and experienced public opinion research firm strictly for the purposes of objectively assessing public opinion on a proposal to authorize the levy of an additional .98 mils for the purpose of constructing and operating a new Macomb County jail. The results of the poll shall be provided by a public opinion research firm to the Board of Commissioners no later than July 15th, 2019. Further, the Board of Commissioners authorizes the execution of requests for bids from public opinion research firms to conduct the poll, and authorizes Board Chair Smith and Commissioners Leonetti and Kraft to select the public opinion research firm organization that will execute the poll from proposals submitted by qualifying bidders. And if that is accepted, I would like to speak to it briefly.
Okay, is there a second? Would be Commissioner Carabelli on his proposal? On his amendment?
I've already put my name to asking questions. All to speak.
Well, there's an amendment, and he needs a second.
That's why I'd like to speak to it. It's to...
Is it an additional $20,000 to have a poll done prior to?
Prior to our next meeting next month.
Okay, so you're going to have something in our hands before the 18th.
Well,
No objection.
You would support that amendment? Yeah, you're not, yeah. Okay, so we have a second. So now we can have discussion, and it looks like we have Commissioner Kleinfeld on the floor.
Yes. This is the second time on a hot-button issue. The last one was the 911 issue, where an amendment has been thrown at us that doesn't remotely relate to the original motion. I find it offensive that that's how this body has started conducting business. If this were to be an agenda item, it should have been placed on the agenda. I should have had this piece of paper that I could have read last night while going through my packet, just like the one that happened with 911. It was handed to me as the agenda item on building a courthouse was being discussed, and it had nothing to do with building a courthouse. This is an inappropriate way for us to conduct business. If he'd like to put it on tomorrow's agenda to have a discussion and a vote, I would at least be acceptable to doing that, but we got to stop conducting business this way. It's inappropriate, and we got to stop it. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the concerns of Commissioner Kleinfeld. This is, however, about the agenda item, the resolution authorizing millage for the construction, equipping, operating, maintaining, and financing the jail. The agenda item that is on the agenda, furthermore, pertains to the original motion to postpone that so we can gather more information at next month's meeting. So everything about this particular motion pertains exactly to the agenda item and exactly to the original motion made to the agenda item. The goal is for us as a board to get more information during the next few weeks before we vote on the main motion. And the reason for doing this is we've spent $1.7 million already on this proposal that we didn't have any problem approving. And now we're being asked to spend $400,000 in addition to that to have a special election for half the county where there's nothing else on the ballot anywhere else in the county. Yet we really don't even know what public support is like, whether it has a chance of passing. I made this motion because I'd like to get an assessment of what the public opinion is of this proposal before we spend another $400,000 and put it on the ballot. And maybe it gets annihilated. Maybe we should move to Plan B quicker. Maybe it's supported. Each commissioner will make their own determination about what the results of the public opinion research means and whether or not it should affect their decision on putting the ballot. But I think having that additional information is helpful. I think what's very important about this is that the information is strictly to measure public support in its current form. And the objective is certainly not to try to influence or sway any other question. It's just to measure existing public support, so we have a better tool in deciding whether we want to spend $400,000 on top of the $1.7 million we already spent, or maybe we should have a plan B. And $20,000 is a very, very small amount of money compared to what will be, it's at that point up to $2.2 million that we'll have spent if we go ahead and put this on the ballot in addition to the 1.7 we've already spent. So I think it's just a reasonable request for a very modest amount of money to see what the public thinks. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I have one question as a point of information. Where are you proposing that the money comes from for this?
The board commissioner's budget.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Which is something that we've had in excess of every year. We've rolled additional money, or we've had additional money at the.
Okay, all right, thank you. Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. I respect my friend's proposal and intentions, but it's something certainly that I think is inappropriate to bring up here today. I mean, certainly tomorrow would be some time to think about. We've had a lot of talk about throwing good money after bad, and I'm not so sure on the public opinion poll is going to make any difference to any of these commissioners here. I think I got a pretty good sense of what the public opinion is on this issue anyway, in my district certainly, if not broadly the county. So I'm not so sure spending $20,000 on a public opinion survey is really going to tactically make any difference. So at the least, I'd ask that you withdraw it, at least give us some time to think about that until tomorrow. I have been so concentrated on what the discussions going on here today, I didn't even look at this. I didn't have time to even read it till you just read it. So you have to forgive me, but normally I like a little bit of time to think about things a little bit. So I'd appreciate, I'm going to vote against this because I don't think it's fair to all of us just to take a look at this right now, and maybe tactically I might vote against it tomorrow anyway, but I just think it would be better for all of us if we just give it a day and let us think about it.
Yeah, well, this motion would just move it to full board. So we still would have
I don't want to
till-
be endorsing something without, if I'm going to vote for it now, I'm going to vote for it tomorrow. I'm not going to, one of those people that's just going to pass along today to think about it tomorrow. So I just would hope I'm opposed to this, doing it right now. Not necessarily about the proposal entirely, but certainly doing it now because it's, again, I'm skeptical about a poll. We know what the polls are. We know the public. We know our district very well. So anyway, thank you.
Chair Smith.
Thank you. I was going to point out to Commissioner Brown that this is just to move it to tomorrow. Commissioner Drollet, you could withdraw it and bring it back tomorrow, saying that you're going to bring it back tomorrow. You can do whatever you want. But my concern is, just like the ballot language, the poll has an opportunity to be leading one way or the other. So I would highly recommend that if this does pass, that we're contacting everybody in their input in the questioning and how that this is put forth to the public.
Absolutely, and that's why I think that you, Commissioner Leonetti, Commissioner Kraft would do a good job of selecting the firm and overseeing that process.
You missed the overseeing the process part in the motion. You mentioned picking the firm, so we'll discuss that further in the if we need to.
Sheriff, come on up. What's your thoughts on this? Did you do any polling? Did you do anything? Yeah. I'm sorry. Go. No. Well, no. I'm asking the sheriff.
No.
I'm asking the sheriff. Okay. What's your thoughts on this?
So you do the polling, and we all know about polls. Remember 2016. So if it's not favorable, then do you just kill it? Do you kill it? That's my question.
That's a legitimate concern.
Yes.
No, that's a legitimate concern. Does that polling have an effect on this body in terms of what we do?
Right.
I'm not so sure Commissioner Drollet is doing that to influence us. I think he's wise enough to know that we're all a little bit looking at as much information as we can get. I guess the real question is, if we do it, will it help you?
Depending, I would say no, because we all know, and again, depending on who the target's going to be, the audience, where, and again, we hope it would be a reputable firm, and again, how many people, and let's all be honest, As soon as the pollsters call, what do? Hang up. So are we really going to get a true makeup? That's my feeling on it.
All right, no, thank you. One thing, Commissioner Drollet, let me just say this. I appreciate the idea of doing it. If we could keep this clean, if we could just keep this resolution as it is on the millage proposal, we got enough issues with that on the ballot language. If we could just keep your original motion in place, move that to the 18th, and then decide this thing on the 25th. If you still want to do a poll, Chairman Smith is right here. We got a full board tomorrow. Commissioner Brown said he'd like 24 hours to think about it. Commissioner Kleinfeld felt this was something that dropped in her lap. It's up to you. I mean, it's your motion. You had support.
I would be more than willing to withdraw this amendment to the motion with the permission of, if Commissioner Calvello would do the same, and put it tomorrow. The reason it has to be done quickly is we want the information to come back before the board before the next meeting in July. If we're going to do it, I actually kind of disagree with something you said. I think the polls to assess the information, the mood of the public or the opinion of the public on this issue, and I think it will affect how commissioners think about whether we should spend $400,000. If it comes back 50-50, some commissioner might think we should move forward. If it comes back 60-40, some commissioner, either way, might still think we should move forward. If it comes back 90-10, the sheriff might not want to move forward. He might say, let's move to Plan B. And he's right that polling information is not always perfect. But the reason why I point to 2016 is because it's an amazing example of how it wasn't one time. Nobody points to 2014 or 2018 when the polls were accurate. I'm not saying the poll's accurate. I'm just saying that I don't want to throw $400,000 after something if there's zero chance of passing. If it has zero chance of passing, we should move on and start working on Plan B. If it has a chance of passing, fine. Let's just find out. So if Commissioner Carabelli is willing to withdraw his second, I'll withdraw my amendment with the permission of the chair that we could add it to Thursday's agenda as an agenda item and have a more discussion at that point.
I'm getting a nod. For the record, Chair Smith, are you willing to let him put this on the agenda for tomorrow? If Carabelli withdraws his support? I just want to keep this thing clean. I want to keep this part of it clean, move it over to the 18th.
Yeah.
That's fine. I mean, if you could really make a motion on something like this at any time, even in new business. So yes, I couldn't stop that anyway. And if everybody feels that they want to at least talk about it tonight, that's fine before we move it forward. And then maybe it comes back or maybe it doesn't tomorrow.
Okay.
So.
Well, then I will withdraw my amendment to my original motion.
Okay. Carabelli?
What I would like to say before I make a decision yes or no is if it is withdrawn, and I agree, will the motion maker who asked for this to be on Thursday's meeting add the sheriff to the committee of the three?
I think that's a great idea. I would love to add the sheriff to that committee.
I think that's very, very fair, and I like fair.
Well,
that's
that
really
makes
good.
4 though, so we might want to have a 5th one.
Fifth one?
So, Schmiegel.
You know what? Yeah, we do. You know what? Schmiegel might not be a bad idea.
It's a bad idea.
Sorry, Steve Schmiegel.
Well, let's have a conversation before we withdraw, and then have a conversation and make the new motion tomorrow.
This isn't an Italian family bargaining unit. Decide. We can talk about it later, right? Exactly. Yeah. You'll withdraw. We can talk about it. All right. So I'm just going to note for the minutes, from what I understand, you're withdrawing your amendment. Your original motion is in play, supported by Carabelli, and there's an understanding from the chair that you're going to have this on the agenda tomorrow. With the sheriff, for sure. We know the sheriff for sure, and Finance Director Schmiegel.
Potentially an additional person. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, that's fair. Okay. All right, so now we'll go back to our original motion. This is to forward the original resolution as we have here presented in
Chair?
6E. Yes, yes.
Just very quickly, because it's been withdrawn, well, I want everybody to consider before tomorrow as well, we'll be taking a poll of the voters before they've been educated on the issue. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to go back to what I was doing, which is the original motion that's on the table is for 6E. So we have a motion, so please vote. No. Oh, I'm sorry. Are there still speakers on this thing? I mean, Commissioner Drolette's motion has been withdrawn. His amendment has been withdrawn. Well, okay, I understand. the motion that's on the table right now is 6E to move it to July 18th, and then we're going to decide that on the 25th. Commissioner Drolette's amendment to that motion has been withdrawn. Yep. So now I saw that Commissioner Romano was on there, and it looks you withdrew. Commissioner Kleinfeld, you're on again. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So let's vote. Passes 12-1 with Andre Dugier, as he promised, voting against postponing it. Okay, let's move on now to item number 6F. I'll make this real quick. This is really me who's proposing this. This is a creation of a 911 surcharge subcommittee. The reason for this is, if you recall, that there were some discussions when we talked to Vicki, about costs that were coming down the road with this stuff. And I know we'll wait till everybody leaves. No, Vicki, are you still here? No, she took off. They don't care. Which is fine. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Yep, I got it. Oh yeah, I got it.
Well, he could have, he knew it was going to be there.
Okay, let me get back on the record while they're talking. So this 911 committee, I'd like to create a subcommittee to my committee. The reason for this is, if you recall, there was talk from Vicki, and this might be tethered to Commissioner Kleinfeld's. There was talk about further expenses coming down the road with ComTac, expenses such as technology upgrades and different software versions. So what I wanted to do was create this subcommittee so that every year we can kind of take a look at the budget and see if we can appropriate some dollars into like a reserve account to have funds available when there's some kind of technology upgrade. The other thing I wanted to look into is for some of those other jurisdictions, like Sarisa and some of the other ones, is whether or not, and I don't know if we can do this or not, but we can discuss in the subcommittee, is if we can somehow give them some type of grant or some kind of matching dollars or something to help them in their needs. So it was a thought that I wanted to put together. If you folks want to vote on creating this subcommittee, then we can have certain members join it. It's up to you. It's an agenda item. I'm looking for a motion for somebody that would support me in creating the subcommittee. Okay, Commissioner Brown and Commissioner Myjack, and of course if there's any discussion. Any discussion on this? No? No, I know. I meant to press details. No, I meant to press details. All right, let's vote on this. After. Okay. That concludes this very lengthy Records and Public Safety Committee. We'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll start with Government Oversight and Department. Oh, we can keep going? Excellent. Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. Item 7A, ordinance establish Freedom of Information Act procedures and guidelines for Macomb County pursuant to Freedom of Information Act. Item 7A. I'll turn over to our counsel who can brief us on the document we have.
Before the committee is a draft ordinance, which I had been directed to prepare to establish the Freedom of Information Act procedures and guidelines and the summary thereof. That's attached to the resolution.
Yeah, you don't use mine.
I'm sorry.
I beg your pardon. I'm sorry about that. Should I start over? I'm sorry. Okay.
Start over.
All right. Sorry about that. I apologize.
So we got it on the record.
Before the committee is a draft ordinance to establish FOIA procedures and guidelines and a summary thereof. for Macomb County pursuant to the FOIA statute. I was asked to prepare the draft ordinance which adopts and incorporates the procedures and guidelines which are attached and a summary thereof. It also so there's really two main components to it. Adopting through the ordinance a summary and the procedures and guidelines, and the other then is just to clarify who the FOIA coordinator is as provided by statute. The bottom line of the ordinance is that each department is a public entity as defined under FOIA. Each department then has the opportunity to select who they want as their FOIA coordinator. So by way of example, all your Article 7 departments under the county executive can appoint or identify who the FOIA coordinator is for them. Each Article 6 department, which are your countywide elected departments, those countywide electeds would then determine who the FOIA coordinator is, and the Board of Commissioners as a body as well would identify who their preference is. It could be that their corporation counsel, or it could be that they wanted to have the FOIA coordinator identified as the elected countywide official. So that's really the two main aspects of this. It is otherwise then compliant with FOIA statute. It's important to adopt the policies and guidelines which have not been adopted before. And since you do have a presence on the internet, the state law requires that it also be published on the internet as well. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah. Commissioner Haw.
Thanks, Chairman. I'm reading ordinances and resolutions, and I thought, I also read something, we were just discussing this today.
Yes,
We were
draft.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Under section 4.6, it says the commission shall act by ordinance if required by this charter or law. What charter, authority, or law are we utilizing to draft this ordinance?
I believe it's the Macomb County Charter, which
I am reading it from the Macomb County Charter.
And Commissioner, just make sure I'm looking at the right spot.
Section 4.6, page, I cut the page number off. I'm reading from the charter, section 4.6. Commission shall act by ordinance if required by this charter or law.
Yeah.
So what charter, what?
Or law. The law is the FOIA statute, which requires the identification of the FOIA coordinator and the adoption of the procedures and guidelines and the summary thereof.
So the fact that you're claiming, if I'm hearing this correctly, that this ordinance is because we have not had a designated FOIA coordinator in the past?
We have not had a designated FOIA coordinator, and that we have not adopted the policies and guidelines and a summary thereof as required by statute.
Well, I know we got a document from General Counsel that says we do have a FOIA coordinator and it's already been designated. So quite frankly, I don't know who asked you to do this, but it certainly wasn't discussed at the board level to do this task prior to it being completed. And I'm going to go back to what Commissioner Kleinfeld said. We almost had a huge conundrum at the last meeting. Had Commissioner Droulette, attachment to the original motion had not been withdrawn, you wouldn't have been able to have delayed that back to the July 19th meeting. We would have had to go back and re-add it to the agenda. So these are the kind of things procedurally. I've been reading this charter to the point that it's given me a headache. And these things, to me, just drive us right into court. So that's my position. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Commissioner Brown.
Commissioner
Thank you, Mr. Chair. After everything's said and done, I was under the impression that Corporation Counsel was the FOIA coordinator throughout the county. And after some information was deemed at a couple of FOIAs out of a department that will remain unnamed was let out, that they shouldn't have let some of this out. I'm very comfortable with having Corporation Counsel be our FOIA coordinator, and I was under the impression that Corp Counsel was the FOIA coordinator countywide. So I don't see why why we want to take the responsibility for having a FOIA coordinator. If Corporation Counsel is doing it, I say let them keep doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Leonetti.
Yeah, just to make it clear, there was absolutely no written FOIA policy for this county until about a week ago, all right? And we've had a lot of issues due to the fact that there hasn't been a written policy. Then we've had to look at the statute and see if somebody was going to have to take it to court and have a declaratory ruling and try to decide how this county from a judge should have a FOIA coordinator, all right? So in the absence of a policy, Pete was instructed by me to take a look at drafting a policy, and I believe he put these policies together sometime last week and sent them out. Now, to his credit, the executive has finally put a policy online. He put a policy on last week. I looked at it. It's online. I've got a copy of it from Corporation Counsel. And I agree with Commissioner Duge, and I agree somewhat with Commissioner Haw. Now that we got a written policy, I don't really know if we need to deal with this anymore. But with, you know, and if anybody's looking to offer some criticism, I guess the only thing to say is why it's not a question of, in my opinion, it's not a question of who the FOIA coordinator should be. In my position, it should be Corporation Counsel. I completely agree. The question is why we didn't have a policy. And if you want to offer some criticism on that, you can argue about why we didn't have a policy for how many years until last week. That's fair. But I think what's in place now, from my position, is fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lucido.
From reading this, I guess I'm trying to, sorry. Thank you, Chair. I'm trying to understand if we are creating our own, or is that what
Yes.
we're voting on?
Yes.
Creating our own?
We're not voting today, but this is a draft.
To go to
bring it to
full
you.
board, or to,
No, this is a draft for, no one's, we're not taking a vote on this today. It's for discussion. You're going to
Right.
review it, and then we'll bring it back on my agenda for future meeting
okay,
for
so
discussion. This is
it's
the
not
first
gonna be
reading,
at-
if you will.
it's not going to be at tomorrow's full
No.
board?
No.
Okay. That's what I needed to know.
Yeah.
Thank
yeah.
you. I think
I
we
know the
have-
way we've been running around here, sometimes you get caught by that.
Right, but I think we need to have more discussion on this.
Exactly. That's why I
Yeah.
brought it here. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
I did hear somebody request that one be put out by Pete at the end of that meeting. But I walked away thinking, we didn't give any direction as to what we wanted the thing to say or who we wanted the FOIA coordinator to be. So I was wondering, who gave the guidance to Pete as to who he should list as the FOIA coordinators?
I can answer questions. So it's my committee, Records and Public Safety, okay? I told Pete's the one, and I give him credit. He says, you guys don't have a written policy. When we're dealing with people coming up here and saying they're going to sue the county, individual citizens are going to sue the county to figure out who the FOIA coordinator is supposed to be
Right,
for the
you
county.
already
Hold
explained
on,
that.
let me finish, okay? I told Pete, put something together. I had no input on what he's drafted here. These two items are simply something that Pete put together. I will tell you this, while he was drafting that, I was doing my due diligence. I talked to 4 out of the 5 elected department heads. Let me finish. Let me finish.
You
Hold
didn't
on.
you're not even touching on the question.
Let me finish.
I mean,
let me finish. I talked to 4 out of the 5, Candace Miller, the sheriff, the clerk, and I also talked to Larry Rocca. None of them want to have their own individual FOIA coordinators. Well, you could interpret the statute to suggest that maybe they could have their own individual FOIA coordinators. If they yield that, which all of them have, then they all yield it to Corporation Counsel. That's exactly who they wanted to have to be their FOIA coordinator. So, again, Pete was instructed. Well, okay, go ahead. Ask your question. Go ahead.
Okay, I got that. You asked him to put together an ordinance. Everybody understands that. That's not what my question was. My question was, who gave Pete the guidance as to who he would choose to put in as the FOIA coordinators? Or did he on his own say, okay.
Why don't you ask him directly? All right, Pete?
That's what I was doing. That's exactly what
Well,
I
why don't you
was
ask me
doing.
then? Why
Well,
don't you ask us-
actually,
why don't you
I
ask a
asked,
direct question?
actually, my first question was, did anybody give him the direction? And nobody gave him the direction, but the long answer I got had nothing to do with my
let's shorten
question.
it up. Pete? I'm sorry, Commissioner. Pete, would you please ask your question?
Sure, Commissioner. No one gave me direction. The way I drafted the ordinance is to have fidelity with the statute. The statute provides that each of the public entities identify, and so that this allows them to identify whoever they want. And so if a countywide elected wanted to have corporation counsel, they could choose to do so. So it doesn't specifically identify who the coordinators are. It provides the opportunity for them to designate who it would be. And also, it's just a structure for consideration by the commission.
Okay.
If I may, I have one other comment too, because, and I would just point this out, that, so I also, we all had received then a copy of the county FOIA policy that was prepared. And so I would just simply observe that if I were to make a suggestion, is that's still incomplete. It doesn't comply with FOIA as yet. And specifically that it needs to have a summary thereof of your procedures and guidelines. That's not in here. It needs to be updated further.
That's why we brought this out as a first reading, so we get everyone to take a sounding board and take the executive brought in some comments. We've heard from our board. We have our council's opinion. So, I've interrupted you. You're still got to finish speaking. I'm sorry. Yeah, sure. Okay, all right. Thank you. Commissioner Haw? Yes, sir. Take your
Chairman.
time. Take your time, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you.
You got the floor.
I wanted to do real quickly. What is going to go on the agenda and what, we're not voting today, right?
No.
So when this gets passed to the full board, what's going on?
It's not going to the full board. It's staying in the committee. Staying in committee.
Staying in committee.
Staying in committee.
Okay, so we're doing nothing.
There's receive and filing. Would you like to
Motion
make the motion?
receive and file.
All right, made by Haw, supported by Kraft. Further discussion, Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you. I was standing there when Commissioner asked him directly to do that, and that would have eliminated some of the issues of hiring outside counsel for other departments. At that time, I have no problem with them putting this together because we did not have a policy. So with that said, this is something for you to chew on, digest, come back and make any changes so that when he brings it back up in the next committee meeting, it will be something for adds, changes, or anything else. Now, since then, we got something. And Pete said that there may be some modifications that need to happen. So now it's a working document that we're going to receive and file, go back, and if any change or anything, get with the chair of the committee, and we'll bring it back up onto the table.
Thank you.
Oh,
good. Anybody else? There's been a motion to receive and file this item. Please vote. Thank you, Commissioners. We do have a receive and file. We need a receive and file on the correspondence from the Executive's Office. Need a motion moved by Hollis, supported by Commissioner Carabelli. Any questions or discussion on that? Please vote. Item 9, any new business? Any new business to come before the committee? Seeing none, public participation. Anyone from the public wish to be heard? Anyone from the public? Anyone from the public? Seeing none, we'll close public participation. Need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Leonetti, supported by Commissioner Gillette. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Have a good afternoon.